like the traditional HTML-based web app, custom branding, callouts to retrieve data from external system and complex flows are all possible using real-time mashups. It is frequently used when immediate access to data residing outside of Salesforce is needed, such as retrieving multiple documents from several external systems. So these were some of the prominent types of Salesforce integration. So now I guess you have some idea about the types of Salesforce integration. So let us move on to our next topic and see what are the things you should consider or keep in mind before starting a Salesforce integration project. So the first point you need to keep in mind is the identification of the integration type. It could be real-time or batch integration. Real-time integration is the procedure of recording the data immediately as soon as it is created or updated. On the other hand, batch integration is the process of collecting data at a regular interval and not instantly. The next point you should consider is reviewing the API limits. The API limits shouldn't exceed 15,000 API calls per day. It is important because it helps in maintaining the optimal performance of your project. The third point is knowing about all the information which is needed to move data between systems. You need to have prior knowledge about the requirements and the steps to perform for integrating Salesforce with a third-party application. The fourth point is assuring authentication of the system that you're going to integrate with Salesforce. Next, you should reconsider design if you're using Apex to solve middleware issues. So in Salesforce, code-based integration occurs using Apex programming language, which comes with a powerful set of features that allows organization to create custom APIs and third-party APIs for some additional data. So with such additional features, many people try to use it as a middleware rather than an integration tool. So it can turn out to be a very serious issue as Apex is not designed for handling complex middleware applications. So you need to keep this point in mind. The next point is creation of custom APIs to call third-party APIs for additional data. Next, you need to understand when to move data to Salesforce. This is because allocation of data capacity comes with several licenses, and it is strongly recommended to get access to capacity planning and archival strategies before you move your data to Salesforce. The next things you should consider before a Salesforce integration project is you should know about the configuration options and also have understanding of performing integration on enterprise and unlimited data. So these were a few things you need to keep in mind before you start a Salesforce integration project. So with this said, let us move on to the next topic and see what are the advantages of Salesforce integration. Now, integrating Salesforce with different applications have their own benefits. Like integrating Salesforce with Gmail has its own set of benefits, then integrating Salesforce with Outlook has its own set of benefits, and so on. So in this topic, I'll just talk about some of the general benefits of integrating Salesforce with external systems. The first benefit is it offers all-in-one access. As I've mentioned before, Salesforce can be integrated with various other third-party applications. So the users can access the functionalities of both Salesforce and the third-party application. They won't have to switch between systems to get what they need. They can stay logged into one system and get everything done over there itself. The next benefit is it increases the productivity. So sometimes job requires a lot of copying data to ensure it appears in all the systems. However, manually copying and pasting this task can sometimes lead to mistakes, and it can also take away most of your valuable time. But you can integrate systems to have automated checks and balance to ensure they have the same information. So the time spent in duplicating data will reduce, and you can spend those time in being more productive. The next advantage of Salesforce integration is it provides enhanced communication. So in a company, there is a possibility of one department being more comfortable with Salesforce while the other one preferring to work with a different system. Now integrating the two systems allows each team to work in different systems they prefer while streamlining communication, which leads to more information being shared. Moving on to the fourth advantage of Salesforce integration is it automates workflows without any code. Salesforce integration will be beneficial since it automates many workflows for your organization. What this means is some tasks that are repetitive and require absolutely no human being to handle this can be automated using Salesforce integration. For this, sometimes you don't even have to code, you can just integrate your required application from Salesforce App Exchange. The fifth advantage of Salesforce integration is it can help you make better decisions. Better decision making is not possible when the data exists in parts. So Salesforce integration offers a complete view of the data, and that results in improved decision making based on a proper understanding of risk and the benefits. Salesforce integration offers streamlined data flow and relevant reports to improve your decision making with critical insights on customer data, which will help you make better decisions and take the best actions. So these were some of the advantages of Salesforce integration. Now let us move on to a final topic for today, which is the demo part. So we're going to see two demos today. The first one is how to integrate Salesforce with Outlook, and the next one is how to integrate Salesforce with Workbench. Now, Workbench is a powerful web-based suite of tools which is designed to interact with Salesforce.com organization via the Force.com APIs. We're going to use REST APIs in order to integrate Salesforce with Workbench. So first, let us search for Microsoft Office. Next, select all apps from here. It will be at the bottom. Now you have an option here called as add-ins. So click on that. Now this will direct you to a web page where there will be a lot of add-ins. So now you can just search for Salesforce over here, or you can just scroll down until you find Salesforce. You will usually find it under the popular Microsoft 365 column. So we have Salesforce over here. So we'll just click on Salesforce. So you can see Outlook over here, which means we can integrate Salesforce with Outlook. You can scroll down and read about Outlook's integration with Salesforce. Now this is a very simple approach. There is no need for any software to be installed or pushed or maintained. Here are some of the benefits of integrating Salesforce with Outlook. You can view all the contacts, leads, account opportunities and cases which are basically present in Salesforce. You can view all of them in Outlook. You can use the functionalities of Outlook and Salesforce at one place. Now what would that do? It would increase the productivity. You can search and browse Salesforce record inside Outlook. You can create new Salesforce record including custom object records directly in Outlook. You can add emails and appointment to Salesforce record in one click even when it is composing emails. And there are so many benefits of integrating Salesforce with Outlook. Once you've read through all this, you can just click on Get It Now. Now before this, you will get a dialog box which will ask you to enter your Microsoft username and password. Then after you've entered your username and password, you will get a form like this. Here you have to enter your name, your work email ID, your job title, the company you work for, the country or region you're present in, and your phone number. Now after you give all the details, just accept the condition and click on continue. It will take some time for this to happen. Next, it will direct you to this web page where you'll have an add button over here. Just go ahead and click on the add button. Next, it will show you some instruction on how to get started with Salesforce. Where all can we use Salesforce with Outlook? So we'll close this. Now you can see Salesforce is added. So we'll close this. Now click on this new message. Go to options. Here you will find Salesforce. It will either be present here or here. So we'll just click on this. Next, it will ask you to select the environment. So ask this production environment. So we'll just select that and click on login to Salesforce. Next, we'll allow it, which will redirect us to a Salesforce login page. So we'll select the account. Now as I was logged in, it did not ask me for password, but usually it would ask you for the username and the password. Next it says connect your Salesforce account name to your Microsoft email account of Outlook. After the connection is established, you're automatically logged in into Outlook integration from now on. So click on confirm and just wait for some time for Salesforce to be integrated with Outlook. You see, it is so simple to integrate Salesforce with Outlook. Now a sales representative can perform all the functionalities of Salesforce and Outlook at one platform. They don't have to switch between Salesforce and Outlook. They can perform all these functionalities at one place in Outlook. So now let us move on to a second demo where we'll see how to integrate Salesforce with Workbench using REST APIs. So in this demo, we'll see how Salesforce record has been displayed in Workbench. So for that, let me sign in into my Salesforce account. Click on login. Now if you're wondering why do you have two usernames, it is because one account is in the professional edition and the other one is in the developer edition. I want you to know that you cannot create Apex classes in the professional edition. So I'm going to log in into my Salesforce developer edition. Now if you're new to Salesforce and you haven't created your account, let me go back. Just click on try for free and then enter all your details over here and then click on start my free trial. But as I have my account, so let me just log in. So for this demo, I want to display all the account details in Workbench application. But before that, let us see what are the values present in our account. So we'll just go to accounts, select all accounts. Now you can see there are a few account details over here. Some of the fields we have is account name, account site, which is empty, the billing state and province, the phone number, the account type, and the account owner. So I guess I have somewhere around 14 demo accounts. Now we can also decide what are the fields or how many account records I want to display in Workbench. So to execute the code, let us first go to setup, search for Apex over here, select Apex classes, and create a new Apex class. So first step is we need to set REST resources and set a URL mapping. So for that, @REST resource URL mapping is equal to single quotes /. You can name this anything. So let me just name it accounts / star and then close the bracket. Next, what was the first step in the business logic layer integration? It was creating a global class, which basically acts as a container for the code. So now let us create a global class. Global class. You can name it anything you want. Let's just name the class as view account. Next, in order to extract account details from Salesforce, we need to use the HTTP GET method. So @HTTP GET. We're using HTTP GET method in order to extract the account details which is present in Salesforce. Now, after we've extracted the account details from Salesforce, I want it to be viewed in the form of a list. So for that, global static list account get account. Next, creating an instance list account LST. LST is equal to select. Now here you can select what all fields you want it to be displayed. Like there were username, there were phone number, there were the state, province, and the type. So I'm just going to select name, phone number, and the type for that account. So I'll type in name, phone, type from accounts. Next, we're going to return the list. Then click on save. So I missed the semicolon over there. So I just added it and clicked on save again. Now open a new tab and search for Workbench. The environment will be production itself, but you need to find your API version. So for that, go back to Salesforce, search for API over here. Open this in a new tab. So you have an option here to generate Enterprise WSDL. So click on that. Now this will generate a file which tells you which API version you have. You can see our API version is 52.0. So we'll select 52, agree for the terms of service, and click on login with Salesforce. It'll ask you for the username and password. Here I'll select my username. Now under jump to, click on REST Explorer and click select. Now here you see you have an option of choose an HTTP method to perform on the REST API service URI. And there are 6 methods over here. The get method is used to retrieve information about record or object. The post method is used to create a new object. The put and patch method is used to update a record. Next, delete is used to delete a record. And head is used to retrieve objects or records metadata. So as we have used HTTP get method, we'll just select get over here. Instead of data and version 52, we type apex rest / what was the URL mapping accounts. So we need to copy this and paste it over here. And then click on execute. You can see all our 14 account records are displayed in Workbench. So when you select this, you can see the name, phone number, and the type. If you want, you can make any number of changes. You can make sure only the name of the record is visible, or you can make sure only the first 10 or the last 10 records are displayed. You can make many changes according to your convenience. So this was just a small demo to show you how you can integrate Salesforce with other applications using APIs. What is organization level security in Salesforce? So basically, there are 4 levels of security in Salesforce: organization level security, object level security, field level security, and record level security. Let us talk about them one by one. First is the organization level security. So organization level security is the highest level of security in Salesforce. It includes maintaining a list of authorized users, setting password policies, and limiting logins to certain hours and locations. So basically, the organization level security lets you decide when and from where your users can access the system. It secures the data from any unauthorized users. So some of the important security features in this level of security includes restriction of IP addresses, password policies, and login access. So let us understand this one by one. So first is IP restriction. You can allow certain users or your employees to log in from a set of IP addresses. So using trusted IP ranges, you can limit your users' ability to log in only when they are in the office. Furthermore, if they attempt to log in from outside the trusted ranges, they might be asked for two-factor authentication, in which they'll have to enter a code sent to their mobile devices in order to log in. You can set this IP restriction on individual user profiles or even a group of profiles. Next, we have password policies. Here you can specify an amount of time before a user's password expires and the type of password required to log in. Like you can decide the rules to create a password. Like the password should be at least 10 to 12 character long. Like it should contain at least one symbol. It should have both uppercase and lowercase letters and numbers. You can basically set rules to set a password. And having a strong password will make it hard for hackers or unauthorized users to guess the password and log into the account. Next is the login access. Here you can specify the hours from when to when the users can log in depending on the job. So let's say, for example, you do not want certain users to log in during the weekend, or you want to limit the night shift employees to log in only during their shift. All this can be set in the organization level security. Now let me switch to my Salesforce account so that I can show you what all can be done in the organization level security. So I've logged in into my Salesforce account. So people who are new to Salesforce, this is what the Salesforce homepage would look like. So now let us go to setup, click on setup, and in the quick find, let us search for users. Select users. Here you can see we have a set of users. We have the system admin, we have the chatter-free user, we have analytics cloud integration user, and the analytic cloud security users. Now I've logged in as a system administrator. So you can create new users or create multiple users or reset password for any of these users. So if I want to create a new user, I'll just click on new user. I'll enter the details and then click on save. Now it is the duty of system administrator to add new employees into the Salesforce organization. So these are the important fields, which means it cannot be empty. You can enter his first name, last name, his alias, email, username, nickname, and then select a role and the user license and its profile. Now let us go back. So when you click on a user, it will give you details about the user and what all permission they have. Now if you want, you can change your password from here, or you can just go back or just select the user and click on reset password. So this is how you can add new users or reset password for any user. Now let us see how can we set password policies. For that, let us search for profiles. Select profiles. So just select the profile you want to set the password policy for. So I'll just click on contract manager over here. I've just selected a random profile. So let me just scroll down and you'll get password policies. Now you can see the default password policy set as user password expires in 90 days. In the password history, 3 passwords will be remembered. The minimum password length is 8 characters. The complexity must include alphabet and numerical characters. The password question required, it cannot contain the password. The maximum invalid login attempts are 10 and the lockout effective period is 15 minutes. Now if I want, I can change this to anything I want. I can select when the user password expires in, what is the minimum password length, how many password would be remembered, the password complexity, the password question requirement, the maximum invalid login attempts, and the lockout effective period. So this is how you can set password policies in the organization level security. So now let us see how can you limit login access to certain hours of a certain location. So again, scroll down. Right under password policies, you have login hours and login IP address. So if you want, just click on edit and you can decide from when to when you want this particular user to log in. Now, if you don't want the user to work on Saturdays and Sundays, you can make sure he cannot log in, or you can make sure he can only log in during the office hours and after that he cannot. Next, in login IP ranges, you can limit the IP addresses from which a user can log in. So this was about organization level security. So now let us move on to a next level of security, which is the object level security. Now, before we get into the next three types of security level, I want you to understand what exactly are objects, fields, and records. Objects in Salesforce are like leads, contacts, opportunities, or any other custom objects. Fields are basically the columns in the tables, and records are the rows or entries in the table. So now coming to the object level security in Salesforce. Object level security or object permission helps control data access. Using object permission, you can prevent a user from seeing, creating, editing, or deleting an instance of a particular object type, such as a lead or an opportunity. Object permission lets you hide whole tab and objects from a particular user so that they don't even know that a type of data exists. This does not always have to be about preventing the access. You can also give access to certain users to see and edit the objects. Now there are two ways of setting object permissions. One is profiles and the other one is permission sets. Let us talk about them one by one. First is profiles. Now profiles are a collection of settings and permission that determine what a user can do in the application, which means what data and features can be accessed by the user. So for example, a sales representative will have a sales profile. So he can only access the object that he will need to carry out his daily task. He won't have access to the data or object that a developer uses and the vice versa. So in object level security, you can assign only those objects that the user profile will use. So basically, profile controls objects that a user can see and what they can do on those objects. Like can they read it or even edit and delete it. So I guess you have some idea about profiles. Now let us see what are permission sets. Now permission sets is a collection of settings and permission that gives user access to various tools and functions. Permission sets extends user functional access without changing the profile. So if a permission isn't enabled in a profile to access an object but is enabled in a permission set, users with that profile and permission set can access the object. It's just like additional access to object. Let me give you an example so you can understand this better. Let's say you have several users who must delete and transfer the leads, but according to the profile, they cannot delete and transfer the leads. So you can create a permission set based on the task so that the user can perform the task of deleting and transferring the leads. So now let us switch to our Salesforce console to see how can you set profiles and permission sets. So again, just search for profile over here. So from here, just select the profile who you want to give access or deny object access. So I'll just select a random profile. Now you can just scroll down. So now when you scroll down, you will find standard object permission. Now as I'm logged in as a system admin, I can set what all tasks a user profile can do. So under standard object permission, you can set what all the user can access and what all object the user cannot access. So if I want to give the user only read access in account, I can just uncheck all this, create, edit and delete, then he won't be able to create, edit or delete an account object. So this is how you can grant object access to different Salesforce profiles. Now let us see how can you set permission sets. So for that, let me type permission sets. We'll click on it. Now if I want to create a new permission set, I'll just click on new over here. Ask me to label it. I'll just label it new user. And if you want, you can add a license. Else you can just click on save. Now here you'll find something called object settings. So from here you can set additional permission for a profile. So let's say I want to set a permission for account object. Click on edit. So you can give permission for the user profile to either read it or create, edit or delete it. So this is like an additional permission for a user profile. So I guess you have some idea about object level security. So now let us move on to the next level of security, which is the field level security. Field level security allows user to have access to an object while limiting their access to individual field in that object. Field level security or field permission controls whether user can see, edit, and delete the values for a particular field of an object. They let you protect sensitive fields without having to hide the whole object from the users. Now, field permissions are also controlled in permission sets and profiles. Field permission control the visibility of fields in any part of the application, including related lists, list views, reports, and search results. So in this level of security, to ensure a user cannot access a particular field, we use field permissions. And one more important point in field level security is that field level security can only restrict access. It cannot grant it. It is similar to object level security, but at a field level. Now let us switch back to a Salesforce account to see how can you set field level security. For field level security, you need to go to profiles, select the profiles, then select the user profile for whom you want to set the field level security. So just scroll down and you'll find field level security over here. So these are all the fields which are present in your Salesforce account. You can just click on the particular field you want to make the changes in and click on edit. Now if you do not want the particular user to see the annual revenue, and you can just unclick it and the user won't even know that there is a field called annual revenue. So this is how you set field level security. So now let us move on to a last level of security, which is the record level security. Record level security allows particular user to view an object but then restrict the individual object records they are allowed to see. So the user can see the object, they can see the fields, but some records will not be visible to them. For example, an interviewer can see and edit only his or own reviews. He cannot edit or see the reviews of other interviewers. Now, record level security is often referred as Salesforce sharing model or simply record sharing. You can manage record level access in 4 ways. First is organization-wide default. In Salesforce, records have a field called owner ID that points to a real user. Owner of the records are usually people who have created a record and have full CRUD access to it. CRUD means create, read, update, and delete. So if the user wants, he can make the object record private so that only he can view the record, or he can make it public so that other users can also view them. So let me switch to my Salesforce account to show you organization-wide sharing. So as I've mentioned, every record will have a field called as account owner. So let us go and see that. So we'll go to the Sales console, accounts, we'll just click on one account. And here you can see we have a field called as account owner, which is Aman Patra. Now this account owner is the person who has basically created the record and has complete access to it. Now if I want, I can keep this record private so only I can see the record, or if I want, I can also make it public so that other users can see this record as well. So to change from public to private or from private to public, we need to go to sharing settings. So for that, we'll go to setup. We'll search for sharing settings here. So here we have organization-wide defaults. And here under object, we can see account and contract. And the default internal access is public read-write and the default external access is private. So if you want to change it, we can just go to edit. And for account and contract, we can just make it private. So only I will be able to view the record, or you can make it public read only. So only the users can read it and not make any changes to this. And if I give public read-write, which means the other users can even edit the record. So this was a demo for organization-wide sharing. The next way is role hierarchy. This gives access for users higher in the hierarchy to all the records owned by the users below them in the hierarchy. For example, the sales representative can only view their record and not their colleague's record. But the managers can view all the sales representatives' record. Now, role hierarchy does not have to match your organization chart exactly. Instead, each role in a hierarchy should represent a level of data access that a user or a group of users needs. Now the question arises here is, how can I share my records with my fellow employees? So this can be done by sharing roles. A user or admin can share records based on roles and subordinates and public group ownership. For example, a sales executive can share all the records owned by him with everyone in the service executive role if he wants to. Next, the fourth way of managing record level access is manual sharing. Manual sharing provides a mechanism to share individual records with others. This permission is accessed through sharing button on the record detail page and lets end users share individual records with each other. So this was about the different level of security in Salesforce. So now let us move on to the next topic and see some of the Salesforce security features. The first feature is auditing. Now Salesforce keeps a track of all the login attempts for the past 6 months. This includes the location of the login attempts and the IP addresses. Administrators can also turn on field history tracking, which gives them visibility into field value changes and the users who perform the changes. The next feature is two-factor authentication. Administrators can turn up company-wide two-factor authentication. So when a user tries to log in from a different system or a different IP address, he can be asked for verification, and this verification could be something like an OTP sent to his phone or email address. Admins can also set login restriction based on the time of the day and the location from which login attempt originates. The next security feature is custom login flow. Now this is one of the innovative access control feature of Salesforce. It has the ability to create custom login flows. So let's say for example, if a user attempts to log in into Salesforce from a restricted IP or during restricted hours, admins can implement a flow that will still allow the users to access Salesforce, but only after they've gone through several steps of authentication beyond the two-factor authentication. In this way, an organization can meet the security requirement while also being able to perform business critical activities within Salesforce. Now moving on to a fourth security feature in Salesforce, it is encryption. Salesforce provides what is known as classic encryption. Admins can encrypt custom fields with 128-bit advanced encryption standard using this feature, which comes out of the box. But there are several limitations to this, including the fact that it only applies to custom text fields that can't be more than 175 characters long. So these were some of the prominent Salesforce security features. Now moving on to a final topic for today, which is what are Salesforce security's best practices. The first one is to turn on IP restriction for users login to minimize the risk of unauthorized access in case of compromised accounts. Second is making organization-wide sharing rule as restrictive as possible, while allowing normal business functions and using role hierarchy, sharing rules, permission sets, etc. to extend access beyond the organization-wide sharing rule. Third is to require secure password that combines uppercase letter, lowercase letters, numbers, and symbols and require a minimum of 8 characters. Next, you need to set the maximum incorrect login attempts to between 3 and 5 times. Fifth, you need to ensure that the user re-login upon session timeout but enable session timeout warning pop-ups. Next, if you're using platform encryption, regularly generate a new tenant secret which will generate a new encryption key. And when destroying the encryption keys, make sure all data encrypted with that key is decrypted first. So these were some of the Salesforce security's best practices. What exactly is Lightning App Builder and how can it be helpful? Now Lightning App Builder, as I mentioned before, is a point-and-click tool that helps in creating custom pages for the Salesforce mobile app and the Lightning experience. It gives the users what they need all in one place. With Lightning App Builder, you can build a single-page app or a dashboard-style app, which means an application which will display reports and dashboards. Or you can also customize record pages for your object. You can tailor it according to the need of the users, which will make it very easier for the user to access the important records first. You can also customize the home page so that all the components and features that you use the most will be easily accessible to you and you do not have to search for them. Now one point you need to remember is you do not have to code for creating an app page in App Builder. As I mentioned before, it is a point-and-click tool, which means you just have to pick the components and drop them in your application. Now if you're wondering what are components, well, components is a compact, configurable and reusable element that you can add to a Lightning page in the Lightning App Builder. I will show you in the demo part what components are, but just to give you an idea, components can be a text box or a report chart and so on. So there are 3 types of components here. First one is a standard component. Standard components are Lightning components built by Salesforce itself. These are like a few default components. Few examples of standard components are text box, report chart, recent items. Next, we have the custom components. Custom components are Lightning components that the user or someone else have created. You can configure the custom Lightning components according to your preferences to work in the Lightning App Builder. Next is the third-party components on App Exchange. The App Exchange provides a marketplace for Lightning components. You can find packages containing components already configured and ready to use in the Lightning App Builder. So I guess you have some fair idea about Lightning components. Now let us see what can we exactly do with this Lightning components. So you can create different types of Lightning pages with the Lightning App Builder. One of them would be you can create an app page. Now an app page is used to build one-page app for Lightning experience and mobile devices. These are often for internal or third-party application that wants a landing page. Next, you can create home pages with features relevant to specific types of users and assign the customized pages to different apps or app and user profile combination. But custom homepage are only supported in the Lightning experience, not in the Salesforce classic user interface. Next, with the record page, you can create a customized version of an object's record page, tailoring it to your user's needs. Custom record page are only supported in the Lightning experience and not in the Salesforce mobile app. So this was about the theory part for Salesforce Lightning App Builder. Now let us move on to a demo part and see how can we create an app page in Salesforce Lightning. So for our demo, let us first sign in into a Salesforce account. So I'll just search for Salesforce login over here. Just click on login Salesforce. Now I've already created my Salesforce account. All I have to do is enter the password and click on login. But if you're new to Salesforce, just click on try for free over here. So after that, you have to enter your details such as your first name and the last name, the job title, your email ID, your phone number, the company you're working for, the number of employees in your company, the country, and the language. Then you can just agree to the condition and click on start my free trial. After this, a mail is sent to your email ID which contains a Salesforce link and your username. You can save the link to easily log in later, and then when you click on the link, it will ask you to set a password. Then after you enter the username and password, you're signed in into your Salesforce console. But I already have a password, so let me just log in. So I'll just click back. So this is what the Salesforce Lightning user interface would look like. To go to App Builder, first click on Setup. Select Setup. Scroll down until you see User Interface. Here it is. Here you have an option called Lightning App Builder. So we'll just select it. Lightning App Builder, as I've mentioned in the theory part, provides an easy to use graphical interface for creating custom Lightning pages for Salesforce Lightning experience and even for mobile applications. So we're going to create a new app, so we'll just click on new over here. With Lightning App Builder, you can create a new Lightning app page or customize your home page or the record page. We can also customize the content displayed in the Outlook integration. So for our demo, we're going to create an app page. So we'll select app page and click on next. So first we have to name our application. We'll just name it app demo and click on next. So here you can choose from various formats for your app. So this is how your application will be displayed in different devices. In a desktop, it would be displayed something like this. In tabs this way, and in mobile devices, your application will be viewed in this way. So you can choose from various options here: header and right sidebar, header and 3 region, header and 2 region, main region and sidebar, 1 region, 3 region, 2 region. So let me go with header and 2 region. So I'll just click on finish over here. Now you can drag and drop the components you want for your application. Now I want to see reports and dashboard on my application. So when I open my app, I can see the monthly report and the dashboards. So I'll just drag the report chart and place it over here. And then drag the dashboard component and place it over here. Now you see all these are Salesforce Lightning components. As I explained before, they are reusable piece of code. We can use them in multiple places. Now if I want, I can add any text over here as well. So for that, I'll have to go to rich text, drag and drop it over here, then enter whatever I want over here. Let's say welcome to Salesforce. Now if I want to, I can move this anywhere or even delete it. So all I have to do is click on delete over here and it is deleted. Now for my application, I've selected only reports and dashboard. You can select from any of these components or even add your custom components. As there are no custom components available now, I cannot select anything. Now if you want, you can change your app name over here and even add a developer name, but I'll just let it be app demo itself. Now when I click on report, now if I want, I can label my report or select any report from the available options. I can even filter them according to my convenience. Now after I've edited my app, I'll just click on save button over here. Now I get a message saying that it has been successfully saved. Now here again I can change my application name, but I'll let it be app demo itself. Now I can also select for whom this app page will be visible, for all users or only for system administrators. I'll go with default, which is activate for all users. Next, if I want, I can select any icon for my app page. Click on change and you'll get many icons from here. You can select any one from here. Let me just go with this one. And then click on Lightning Experience. Now this decides where your app page will be visible. Now as my home page is in the Sales Cloud, so I'll just select Sales from here. Now if I want, I can place this tab anywhere, after home, after account, or in the last. So I'll just place it after home. Now you can also do the same for mobile navigation. In your mobile Salesforce app, where you want the app page to be visible. But now we can only see in the Lightning Experience. So we click on save here and our app page is activated successfully. So now let us view our app page. So we'll go back to our Sales Cloud. So we'll refresh it. Now here you can see is our app page. Now as we have not created any reports or dashboard, this board would be empty. But you see how simple it is to create an one-page custom Lightning page. What are workflows in Salesforce? Now workflow in Salesforce is a business logic engine which basically allows you to define some rules which automate certain actions when a particular criteria or a condition is met. In simple words, workflow performs some action, like sending an email or updating a field when a particular event happens or when a particular criteria is met. For example, every time an account is created, an automatic email will be sent to a mail ID using the workflow rules. Now we'll be talking about all these actions and these criteria in the entire session. Also do watch a demo where I will show you how you can set a workflow rule for automatically sending an email. Now let us understand this better. So each workflow rule consists of two main things. One is the criteria and the other one is actions. But before we get into this, I want you to understand that you can set a criteria when a record is being created or when it has been updated. Now these records are only based on a single object. Now I'll just explain you what are objects, fields and records so you'll understand this better. So objects in Salesforce are like leads, accounts, opportunities, contacts or any other custom object. And fields are basically the columns in the table that tells us about what is stored in the records. And records are the rows or any entry in the table. This is basically the information of an individual. Now coming back to criteria. Now criteria is basically the condition that causes the workflow rules to run. Only if the condition is true, the actions are automatically performed. But if the condition is false, then the workflow rules does not apply. Next is actions. Now actions are automatic tasks which are performed after the criteria is met or when the condition is true. So I guess you have some idea about what is workflow in Salesforce. So let us now move on to our next topic and understand what are the automated actions that can be performed in workflows. So firstly, there are two types of workflow actions which actually vary with the time these actions are executed. First is the immediate actions and the next is the time triggered actions. Now as both of the names suggest, the immediate actions are the actions which are performed right after the criteria is met, and the time triggered actions are actions that are performed after a time interval. You can set a time when you want these actions to run. After the particular time is done, it checks for the criteria, and if the criteria is true, then it performs the automated actions. For example, you can automate a workflow rule which will send an email 30 minutes after an account is created. So these were the variation of actions based on the time they run. Now let us understand what are the automatic actions that can be performed using the workflow rules. So the first action is you can send emails. You can automate a workflow rules to send emails to one or more recipient when the criteria is met. So for example, when a sales representative successfully closes a deal, which means when a salesperson convinces the customer to buy the product and when he updates this to the sales record, an email can be automatically sent to the sales team manager informing that the sales was done. So this was about email action in workflow rules. Next we have field update. Now field update action lets you automatically update a field value. So when a record is created or updated and you have set a criteria for field update and the criteria is met, then a particular record field automatically changes. Just to give an example for this, let's say a company gets lead only from a particular country. So whenever a new lead is created, the country field is automatically set to the particular country name. So with this automated action, you do not have to enter the country name over and over again. The next action is task. Task actions are basically a particular task that determines the detail of an assignment given to a specific user by an automated process. You can send a notification email to the assignee when a task is automatically created. For example, if an opportunity is closing in a few days and its amount is too high, then you can automate action using workflow so an employee can look into that matter. Also, tasks should only be assigned to roles if they have only one user assigned to that role. If there are more than one user assigned to that role, then a task is automatically assigned to the user who triggered the workflow rule. After the task action, we have outbound message. An outbound message sends information, which is basically a message to a designated endpoint, like an external service. You can configure what should be the content of the outbound messages from setup. After you decide what the message content is, you have to provide the external endpoint and create a listeners from the message using the SOAP APIs. This is basically sending a message to any external services or any external applications, which are integrated with Salesforce. Also, this outbound message will be in XML format. So these were the different types of actions that can be performed using workflows in Salesforce. Now let us move on to our next topic and see what are the evaluation criteria for workflow. So evaluation criteria means when does workflow evaluate the rule or check for the condition. So there are three evaluation criteria. First is created. This evaluates a workflow rule when a record is created. So when a record is created, it checks for the rule criteria, and only when the rule criteria is met, then it performs the automated action. Using this options, the rule runs only once. For example, when a new lead is created, then the workflow rule will send an email. Next is created, and every time it's updated. Now this evaluates a workflow rule when a record is created and updated. So when a record is created and then updated, it checks for the rule criteria, and only when the rule criteria is met, it performs the automated action. Also with this option, the rule criteria runs repeatedly as long as the rule criteria is met. The third evaluation criteria is created, and anytime it's updated to subsequently meet criteria. Now this evaluates the workflow rule criteria every time a record is created or updated. This usually happens in two conditions. The first case is when you create a new record, it runs the rule if the rule criteria is met. Second, for any updated record, it runs the rule only if the record is changed from not meeting the rule criteria to meeting the rule criteria. With this option, the rule can run multiple times per record, but it won't run when the record edits are unrelated to the rule criteria. Just to give an example for this, suppose that for an opportunity record to meet the rule criteria, the opportunity probability must be greater than 50%. Now if you create an opportunity with a probability of 75%, the workflow rule runs. But if you edit that opportunity by changing the probability to 25, then the rule will not run. Then if you edit the opportunity by changing the probability from 25 to 75, the edit causes the rule to run. With this last edit, the rule runs because the record is changed from not meeting the rule criteria to meeting the rule criteria. So these were the evaluation criteria for workflows in Salesforce. Now let us move on to our next topic and understand some use cases of workflow rules in Salesforce. Firstly, workflow helps in faster conversion of leads. So when a new lead comes in, you do not want to waste any time and try convincing the lead to buy your products. Now for those of you who don't know what a lead is, now a lead is someone who is interested in buying your product. And if you convince them enough, they can even buy your products. So you will have to respond to this lead as soon as possible. Else he or she might just look for the same product with some other company. They can just set a workflow rules that when a new lead comes in, then an email can be sent to a particular sales representative to look into it. Also, let's say if a lead is not claimed within a day, you can use workflow to send an email or a message to the sales manager to look into the matter and then assign a representative manually. The second use case is it helps in providing better customer service. So when a user has any problem, he or she will reach out to the service team to solve the problem. So now firstly, you can set up a workflow email or a message to inform the service team that there is a customer query. And also when a case is resolved, you can set a workflow rule to automatically close a case after a particular amount of time. So in this way, the service team does not have to manually close a case after it has resolved it. It can be automatically done using workflows in Salesforce. The next use case is minimizing human errors. So now all the repetitive tasks can sometimes be time consuming, and you might also forget to send some emails or update some fields. Also when you're sending a message or performing any task, you can miss out on a few things. Let's say, for example, the service team individual might solve the case but forget to close it. Now, this could happen for a various reason. Now, you can just automate this repetitive task, and every time the case is resolved, it can be closed. All these automated actions will help minimize human errors. The next use case is tracking the sales processes. Now, setting up automated action using Salesforce workflow helps sales representative and the manager stay top of their business. So when the sales reps are dedicating the time to a specific customer, other opportunities can be missed as they cannot give time to that. So now for this, email alerts can help them keep updated about the task. Also, the sales manager can set up workflow rules to track competition or to assign tasks to users who have completed a task faster than the others. Also, the sales manager can set up workflow rules to track competition or to assign tasks to users who have completed a task faster than the others, and can also look into deals where the amount is very large and do many other things using workflows in Salesforce. When you go deep into Salesforce workflow, many things are possible. So these were some of the use cases for workflows in Salesforce. Now let us move on to a final topic for today, which is the workflow demo. So for my demo, let me just log into my Salesforce account. For that, go to developer.salesforce.com. So now let's just log in. So click on sign in. So if you're new to Salesforce and you haven't created your account yet, it is very simple to create an account. All you have to do is enter these details, your first name, your last name, email ID, your job role in the company, your company's name, country, your postal ID, and you can set a username over here. Then after you click on sign me up, you'll get a mail to your email ID where you'll have a link and a username. So when you click on the link, it will ask you to set your password. Then after you create a password, you can just log into your Salesforce account with the username and the password. Now as I already have an account, let me just log in. So I'll select my username, enter my password. Now for people who are new to Salesforce, this is what the Salesforce console will look like. Now if you do not find setup in the starting, just go to setup over here. Now here we'll just search for workflow rules. We'll select workflow rules from here. Now here you can see it will explain what exactly is workflow. Workflow automates the following types of action based on your organization processes. It can perform tasks, email alerts, field updates, and outbound messages. All of this we have talked about in the theory session. Here are some of the examples of the workflow actions. Like for tasks, you can assign follow-up tasks to a support rep once a week after a case is updated. Then you have an example for email alerts, field updates, and outbound messages. After that, you can read that each workflow rule consists of two things, criteria and the actions. After you've read this properly, just click on continue. Now we're going to set a new rule. So I'll click on new rule. Now it'll ask us which object do we want to set the workflow rule on. So for a demo, we're going to create a workflow rule that will automatically send an email to me whenever a large deal in opportunity is created. So our object would be opportunity here. So I'll just select opportunity from here and click on next. This is the step one. You have to select the object on which you have to apply the workflow rule. Next, we have to name a rule. So I'll just name a rule as demo opportunity. And if you want, you can add a description about the rule. I'll just give the description as opportunity deal greater than 100,000. Next, we have to decide the evaluation criteria. Now here we'll choose created and every time it's edited to subsequently meet the criteria. So every time the opportunity amount is greater than 100,000, I should get an email. Here we'll keep it the same when criteria are met. Now here we can set which field in the object opportunity has to be changed. So I want amount. So first we have amount. We'll just select it. Now here we have operator. If amount equals to, not equals to, starts with, contains, all this are the operator you can select from. Now I'll select if amount is greater or equal to 100,000. And you can also specify any other condition along with that. Now after you set this condition, which is the rule criteria, just click on save and next. Now this is your second step. Now in the third step, you should specify the workflow action. Here is the condition. Now in order to set up a workflow action, we need to add workflow action from here. You can select any task. From the option, we'll select new email alert. So here you need to give the description of the email alert. So let's say opportunity amount greater than 100,000. Next, we have to give a unique name to our email alert. So let it be opportunity amount itself. Next, we need to select an email template. Now, if you do not already have an email template, I will show you how you can create a new email template. So for that, just go to any one of the console. Just go to a new tab in Salesforce, go to view all, and here search for email templates. Here it is. And now click on new email template. So firstly, we have to name the email template. So let's just name it opportunity. And if you want, you can add any entity type. So it is not necessary. We'll just let that be. Next, you can select in which folder will be the new email template saved. We'll just select the public email template. Now here is the body of the email template. Now email template is nothing but what should be the content of the email which is supposed to be sent. So here we'll add a subject saying opportunity amount greater than 100,000. The body start off with hello. An opportunity is created whose amount exceeds 100,000. Kindly look into this. I'll type an opportunity is created whose amount exceeds 100,000. Kindly look into this. After this, thank you. So let me just save this. Now this is saved as the name of opportunity. So click on save. Now you can see our email template opportunity was created. So let me just go back and just select the opportunity email template. Now here you can see there is no opportunity email template. That is because I'm in the classic user interface. So let me just go to Lightning and see here is our email template opportunity. Now here you can select to whom will the email be sent to. So I want the email to be sent to me. So I'll click on this and I'll add it. Now if you want, you can also add 5 more additional email IDs over here. Next, here you need to select from whose email ID do you want the email to be sent to. Now as there is only one, I'll just go with the current user email ID and just click on save and then click on done. Now our workflow rule is created. Now all you have to do is activate this. Now my workflow rule is activated. So in order to test the workflow rule, let us create an opportunity whose amount is greater than 100,000. So I'll just go to opportunity here and I'll create a new opportunity. The amount here I'll enter as 110,000. The close date, I'll just select any random date. Let me just keep it as 15th August. The name of the opportunity, let's just call him test opportunity. And then the stage will set it as qualification. I guess no other fields are mandatory. So I'll just click on save. Now after I save this opportunity, an email should be sent to my email account. So let me just go check. See, we have got the email. Here is the subject, opportunity amount greater than 100,000. And here is the body of our email. Hello, an opportunity is created whose amount exceeds 100,000. Kindly look into this. Thank you. So you see, it is very simple and effective to create a workflow rule in Salesforce. What is Process Builder in Salesforce? Now, Process Builder is a point and click tool that lets you easily automate business processes and see a graphical representation of your process as you build them. So to explain this in simple terms, Process Builder lets you automate certain actions when a criteria or a particular condition is met. And process builders are designed in a graphical representation. Now, there is also workflow in Salesforce, which is also used for automating actions. So the question here is what to use for automating actions or when to use Process Builder. Well, workflows can be used for only one condition. It is like an if statement. If the criteria is met, only then the actions are performed, else the actions are not performed. And also in workflow, you can automate only 4 actions. But in Process Builder, it's like a multiple if statement. So if the first criteria is met, then the first set of actions are performed. But if the criteria is false, it checks for the next criteria. And if that criteria is true, then the next set of actions are performed. Just think of Process Builder as an enhancement of workflow. Now, each process in Process Builder will consist of 3 main components. First is trigger, second we have criteria, and third is actions. First is trigger. Now, a trigger basically identifies when the process should run. This usually happens in 3 conditions. 1, when a record is created or edited. Next, when a platform event message is received. And next, when another process invokes this process. Next, coming to criteria, a process will have at least one criteria node which decides the condition under which the actions are executed. And next, we have at least one automated actions. And next, a process will have at least one automated actions. The actions could be immediate actions or time-triggered actions. So I guess you have some idea about what is Process Builder in Salesforce. Now let us move on to our next topic and understand what are the evaluation criteria for Process Builder. Now criteria is basically the condition on which the automated actions are executed. So each criteria node controls whether the process executes the associated actions or no. Also, there can be multiple criteria nodes. Like I mentioned before, if the criteria is true, then only the set of actions are executed. Else if it is false, the process checks for another criteria. So if any other criteria is met, then it executes that set of actions which are associated to that criteria. Now when we talk about criteria, in each criteria node, you can filter the condition according to your convenience or even enter a custom formula. For example, in validation rules, the formulas could be either true or to be false. Now you will see all this when I'm doing the demo. It will give you a better understanding. Also, this criteria is not compulsory. You can opt out of criteria and always execute the associated actions. So every time a process is triggered, the set of actions are automatically executed without any criteria or conditions. So this was about the evaluation criteria in Salesforce Process Builder. Now let us move on to the next topic and see what are the automated actions that can be performed using Process Builder. So firstly, there are two types of Process Builder actions, which vary with the time these actions are executed. First is the immediate actions, and the next is a time-triggered action. Now, as both of the names suggest, the immediate actions are the actions performed right after the criteria is met. And next, time-triggered actions are the actions that are performed after a time interval. You can set a time when you want these actions to run. And after the particular time is done, it checks for the criteria. And if the criteria is met, then it performs the automated actions. For example, you can automate a process which will send an email 30 minutes after an account is created. And then it will send the email to the recipient after 30 minutes itself. So these were the variation of actions based on the time they run in. Now let us see what are the automated actions that can be performed using Process Builder. The first action is you can create a record. You can automate a process which will automatically create a new record. So when the criteria is met, Process Builder allows you to create new records and set certain field values for the new record. Now Process Builder creates a record by manually entering values or by using the value of any related records. So this was the first action, that is to create a record. Next we have updating of records. You can update one or more records that are related to the record that started the process. You can update a record with manually entered values or by using the values from related records. Now one major benefits of using Process Builder instead of workflow is that we can update records of both parents or child records, whereas in workflows, we can only update parent's object from the child. The next action that can be performed using Process Builder is you can perform some quick actions. Now, quick actions is basically performing some particular action when the criteria is met. It is determining the details of an assignment given to a specific user by an automated process. You can select some quick actions like log a call or maybe send an email or updating a record which can be given to a particular user. Also, you can send notification email to that assignee when a task is automatically assigned. Just to give an example for this, if an opportunity is closing in a few days and its amount is too high, then you can automate actions using Process Builder so that an employee can look into that matter. So this was the third action in Process Builder. Now the fourth action is you can invoke another process. Now one process can be used to trigger another process. So when a particular criteria is met, you can set an automated action that will trigger another process. So for this action, you need to always use process type as it is invoked by another process. The fifth action is you can launch a flow. Now flow is an application in Salesforce that automates complex business problem. Just to explain this in simple terms, it collects all the data and then does something with that data. It can be used to build code like logic without using a programming language. So you can launch a flow using Process Builder in Salesforce. So this was about the automating flow action in Salesforce. The next action is you can send an email alert. You can automate a Process Builder to send an email to one or more recipient when a criteria is met. For example, when there is a large deal, then you can send an email about the information of the deal to your manager. So instead of manually sending the email, you can automate these email actions. So every time there is a large deal, an email will be sent to your manager. So in this way, you will save a lot of time. Now, in order to send an email alert, you need to first set an email template. Now, the email template will basically contain what will be the body of the email, what will be the subject of the email, and to whom will it go to. Also, you can send custom notification to any user using Process Builder. The next action that can be performed using Process Builder is you can post something to Chatter. Now, Process Builder post to Chatter action helps you post information to any user or group Chatter field within Salesforce. Now, for those of you who don't know what Chatter is basically Salesforce real-time collaboration application that lets users to work together, talk to each other, and share information. Chatter lets you collaborate on sales opportunities, service cases, campaign, and projects with embedded app and custom actions. It is basically a place where you can share all the information and talk to each of your colleagues. So when you post a chatter using Process Builder, the post will appear in the chatter field as if the person who triggered the process had written it. We can also reference group or topics and merge field. Now when I say you can also refer, it means you can add the person name and tell him like congratulations or well done, something like that. Now moving on to our next action that can be performed in Process Builder, you can submit a record for approval. So with Process Builder, you can send a record to anybody for an approval. So when the criteria is met and it needs approval from some higher authority, you can just automate such actions and send that record so it can be approved. For example, when you have to take an approval for some record every week, you can just automate that action instead of manually doing it every week. Also remember that only the records that started the process will be submitted. You cannot submit any other related records for approval. Now, Process Builder can also be used for another action, that is to trigger an Apex code. You can use the Salesforce Process Builder to invoke Apex code you have written within Salesforce. Apex can be anything from custom logic to save a record to complex business processes. And to invoke an Apex class in Process Builder, we have to use the Aura enabled attribute. Now, a very important point to remember here is if you create a process to replace any workflow rule, ensure that you delete those workflow rule when you activate the equivalent process. Otherwise, both workflow rule and the process fires and causes unexpected results, such as overwriting records or redundant email messages. Do the same if you create processes to replace any Apex trigger as well. So this was about the various actions that can be performed using Process Builder in Salesforce. Now let us move on to a final topic, which is the demo part. So for a demo, we are going to create a process in which we'll check for two conditions. The first condition is when the high value opportunity is closed won, which basically means the customer has decided to buy your product. And the next condition is when a high value opportunity is closed lost, which means the customer is not willing to buy your product. So when an opportunity is closed won, we'll automate some actions like first we'll create a contract for the deal, which is very important. Next, we'll notify a user about the deal by sending an email. So we're performing three Process Builder actions over here. We're creating a new record, we're posting to chatter, and we're sending an email. Now the second condition is if the opportunity is closed lost, then we'll send a mail to the user, which could be anyone in real-time scenario. Like it could be the sales manager or the vice president of the sales or someone to look into the matter. So based on these conditions, we're going to create a Process Builder now. So let's get started. So for our demo, we're going to log into our Salesforce console. So for that, we'll just search for developer.salesforce.com. So here you can just click on sign up. Now, if you're new to Salesforce, it is very simple to create your first Salesforce account. All you have to do is enter a few details like your name, your email address, your job role, your company you're working for, your country, your postal code, and you have to set a username for your account. And after that, just click on sign me up. Then you'll receive an email in which you'll have a link and your username. And when you click on the link, it'll ask you to set a password. And after all the process is done, you can just log into your Salesforce account. But as I already have my account, I'll just log in. So for people who are new to Salesforce, this is what the Salesforce console would look like. Now for going to Process Builder, we'll just search for Process Builder over here. Here, we'll just select it. Here you can read about how to create your Process Builder. You have to select your object, you have to define your criteria, and you have to select your actions. All this I've mentioned in the theory section. Now to create a new Process Builder, I'll just click on New. We have to name our process. So let us just name it Process Demo. And the API name is automatically selected as Process Demo. Now if you want, you can describe your Process Builder. Now I would describe it as Demo Process Builder. And next is a very important step. You have to select when the process will start. You have three conditions over here. When a record changes, or when a platform event message is received, or when it is invoked by another Process Builder. So for our demo, we are going to select a record change. So every time a record changes, this set of actions will be executed. So we'll click on Save. Now you see the Process Builder is more like a graphical representation. It's like a flowchart. We have to select an object on which the automation will happen. Then we have to select a criteria, and if it is false, it will stop. But if it is true, it will do some automated actions. You can also time schedule any actions to be performed after a particular time. And after all the actions are performed, the Process Builder will stop. So for our demo, our object is going to be opportunity. So we can just search for opportunity. Here it is. We'll select it. And it will ask when you want the process to start. When a record is created or whenever a record is created or edited. So for our demo, we'll just select only when a record is created because we're not going to update anything now. So we'll click on Save. Now it's the time to add criteria. So we have two criteria over here. One when the opportunity is closed won, and the other one is when the opportunity is closed lost. So let us first automate action for opportunity closed won. So for that, we'll click on add criteria. We have to name a criteria. We'll just name it as criteria 1. Now here we can select what is the criteria for executing actions, when the conditions are met, or when the formula evaluates to be true, or you can just skip this criteria and just execute the actions. So we're going to set conditions. So for our demo, we're going to check for condition. So let it just be condition are met. So now we have to set our conditions. Now as the opportunity should be closed won, we have to select that as a condition. So here we'll search for stage. So we'll select stage. Now if stage equals closed won, the type will be picklist itself and the value is closed won. So if our opportunity is closed won and the deal amount is greater than a particular amount, then only the set of actions will be executed. So in order to set another condition, we'll just click on add row. Now here we'll select amount. So we'll choose this, and amount should be equal to or greater than. So we'll select greater than or equal to. The type will be currency. And now let us set this as 100,000. And after this, it'll ask if you want both the condition to be true, then only execute the actions, or if only one of the condition is true, then you can execute the action. So we'll select AND operator. If both the conditions are true, only then a process builder will execute the actions. So we'll click on save. Now our criteria is also added. Now it's time for us to add our actions. So we're going to add immediate actions. So for that, we'll click on add action. So we have to select what action do you want to perform. So for our first action, we're going to create a record. Now we're basically going to create a contract. Now we're creating a contract because for a large deal, having a contract is compulsory. It acts as a document proof. So now we have to name our action. So let us just name it action 1 and then select the record type. So here we can search for contract. Here it is. And now we have to set the field values for contract. Now for field value, we will select account ID because account ID will be present on the contract that this account has a deal of more than 100,000. We'll go to field reference. The type would be field reference. And now we'll just select the account ID. We'll select the account ID and we'll choose this. Now this account ID will be present on a contract. Next, we'll make this as draft and then just click on save. Now every time an opportunity is closed won and the amount is greater than 100,000, and contract will be automatically created. So we'll just click on save, and here is the first action. So our next action is to send an email. So we click on add action, email alerts. We'll name our action as action 2. Now if there is already an existing email alert, we can select it. But as of now, we do not have any existing email alerts. So let us just create one. Also, when I'm creating this, all of us are on the same page. Now let us first create a new email alert. Now what is email alert? Now email alert is nothing but who the message should be sent to, what should be the subject and body of the email. So we have to decide all that in email alerts. So we have to add a description for the email. So let's just say opportunity deal is greater than 100,000. Now we need to give a unique name to that. So our unique name is automatically selected. So let it just be that. Now we have to select our object, and here it will be obviously opportunity. So I'll select opportunity, and now we have to create an email template. Now an email template is basically what should be the body and subject of the email. So now let me show you how you can create an email template. So just go back. You can create it in classic user interface also, but I'm just going to create it in the Lightning user interface. So open any of this link in a new tab. Now here just search for email template and open this in a new tab. Now here you can create a new email template. So just go to new email template, name the email template. So we'll just name it opportunity closed won. Now if you want to add in a description, you can do that, and you have to select in which folder it will be saved in. It could be either private or public. We'll just make it public for now. And now here, the subject of an email would be opportunity closed won. And the body of the email would be, so a body of the email would be an opportunity whose amount was greater than 100,000 is won. Thank you. And we'll save this. And an email template for opportunity closed won is created. Now we have to create one more email template if the opportunity is closed won. Now this one you have to notify to the manager, or in this case just to me, that the opportunity was closed lost. So now let us create one more email template. So this would be opportunity close lost. And we'll save this also in the public email template. And the subject would be again opportunity close lost. Now the body of this email would be, hey, an opportunity whose amount was greater than 100,000 was lost. We're going to make no much changes in both the email, and we'll just click on save. Now both our email template is created. Now what you have to do is just select an email template over here. We'll just refresh this again and see our email templates. Here we have the two new email templates. So now here we'll just select our email template. Now all the classic user interface email templates will be present over here. But as we have created in the Lightning experience, we'll just click on Lightning over here. And as this is for closed one, we'll select this one. Next, we have to select the recipient type. Now it would be for the user itself. Now we have to select who do you want this email to be sent to. Now I'll select my email ID. I added it. Now if you want, you can send this email to 5 other email addresses. So as of now, I do not want to send it to anybody else. Next, we have to select from whose email ID you want the email to be sent. So it will be current user email ID itself, and we'll click on save. Now our email alert is being created. So we'll go back to process builder, and now we'll just type for that. Our unique name was opportunity deal is greater than 100,000. So we'll just select that and click on save. We have added 2 actions. Now the last action is to post to chatter. So we'll go to add action, go to post to chatter, and we'll just name it action 3. And let us post it to user. Now if you have a group, you can also post this message to the group. Now we'll just select for user, search for user, and I'll just send it to myself. Now here will be the message which will be posted to chatter. We just say good job. Now if you want to add any field to the message, you can do that as well. For example, if you want to add the account ID, you can do that. So let it just be short and sweet, good job. And we'll save this. Now remember, only if the opportunity is closed one and the amount is greater than 100,000, all these 3 actions will be executed. Else it will become false, and check for the next criteria. Our next criteria would be opportunity closed lost. So for that, we'll just name this criteria as criteria 2, and it will be the same when conditions are met. Now we have to select the condition. Now the field again would be stage equals pick list. Here we'll select closed lost. Then we'll add another row, search for amount. If it is greater than or equal to 100,000. Next, the condition would be that all the conditions are met. So click on save. Now we're going to send an email. So I'll just select on email alerts, and this will be action 4. Now we have to create a new email alert, but we have already created an email template. So we'll just create one email alert. We'll name it opportunity deal is lost. And the unique name will be again opportunity deal is lost. Now here we'll just select the email template which we have created before. So go to Lightning again, opportunity close lost. Recipient type again is user. We'll send this email to me again. Everything else will be the same, and we'll just click on save. Oh, we forgot to select the object. So it will be opportunity again, and we'll click on save. Now our email alert is created. So we'll just go back and just search for opportunity deal is lost, and we'll click on save. Now here we have designed a process builder. Now opportunity is the object. Next we have selected 2 criteria. The first criteria is when the opportunity deal is closed one and the amount is greater than 100,000. And next criteria when the opportunity deal is closed lost but the amount is same, which is greater than 100,000. Here we're performing 3 actions and here 1. So the last step is to activate this. So click on activate. Click confirm, and our process builder is being activated. Now let us check if the process builder works. So for that, we'll just go to sales console. So we'll just search for opportunities. Now let us create 2 new opportunity. One which is closed one and the other one is closed lost. So we'll just name this opportunity name as test opportunity 1. And now we have to select the amount. Let it be 110,000. Now the close date, we'll just select any random date. We'll just keep it at 31st. Now we have to link an account name to this. So we'll just select one account name from here. We'll just go with Burlington Textile Corp of America. We have just selected any account over here. Now this is the important part. We have to select a stage. So first let us select closed one. Now nothing else seems mandatory. So we'll just click on save. Now our opportunity was created. So now let us see if a contract was created or no. So we'll just search for contract over here. Here it is. Now if you do not find contract over here, you can go to edit Now here you will find contract. So we'll just select contract from here. And you see a contract was being created. This is the contract number. This is the account name the contract has been made on and the date when it was created. So now let us also check for the email. Here you see we have got an email. Here an opportunity whose amount was greater than 100,000 is one. So this was two of the actions. Now let us see if it was posted to chatter or no. So for that let us go to chatter and here 2 minutes ago, good job. So this was for the first criteria. So now let us check for the second criteria. So for that let us create another opportunity. The amount would be again greater. Let's make it 120,000. Opportunity, will name it as test opportunity 2. The close date again we'll just select any random date. We'll again associate this opportunity with Burlington Textile Corps of America. Now the stage here would be closed lost. And we'll click on save. Now our opportunity was created. Now let us check our email. Now here you see we have got another email saying that an opportunity whose amount was greater than 100,000 was lost. Now you see how easy it is to create a process builder in Salesforce and how effective it is to automate any action in Salesforce. Who is a Salesforce developer? Now a Salesforce developer is an individual who programs software or application solution on the Salesforce platform. They analyze companies' processes, develop CRM workflows, and builds custom application for specific business needs. They work collaboratively with the other team members of the development team in order to create a custom scalable process for the company. Now, a Salesforce developer must also collaborate with the colleagues in the sales, customer support, and marketing team in order to translate business needs into solutions using the right tools. Once these solutions are created, Salesforce developers are also responsible for quality analysis, testing, debugging, and developing user documentation. Now that you know who is a Salesforce developer, let us move on to our next topic and see some of the roles and responsibilities of a Salesforce developer. The responsibility of a Salesforce developer does not just include programming. They also have to gather, analyze, and document functional and technical requirements from the new clients and also solve production issues reported by the old clients. The next responsibility is they translate business requirements into a well-architected solution that uses the best features of Salesforce platform and products. Next, one of the main responsibility is to build Salesforce application using Apex and Visualforce and also leverage the full capacity of Salesforce platform. Next, Salesforce developer have to collaborate with various other teams like the sales team, marketing team, service team to translate business needs into solution using the right tools. They are responsible for developing custom application using salesforce.com and integrating it with other systems. They should apply the best practices and design patterns to build their applications. Their next responsibility is to test and troubleshoot whenever needed. The developers are mostly the decision makers regarding testing and troubleshooting. They handle the process of Salesforce development, which includes coding, troubleshooting, and managing as well. The next responsibility of a Salesforce developer is they should provide technical assistance to end users for troubleshooting bug fixes, for enhancements, and to guide them on how to go about things that they don't understand. Now, these were some of the roles and responsibilities of a Salesforce developer. Now, let us take a look at what are the skills required to become a Salesforce developer. The first skill is analytic skills. Salesforce developer needs an analytic mindset to identify a client's business problems or needs, and then to design and produce a solution according to these requirements. The next skill is communication skills. Now, as a Salesforce developer, you will be expected to communicate complex information to people who might not have much computer knowledge and also have to answer the questions while giving clear instructions. You also have to communicate with your team members and people of other department. Now, the next and the most important skill is development skill. Now, this should obviously be on the list. Now, as a Salesforce developer, you're expected to be skilled in developing application and have knowledge about few of the Salesforce technology like Visualforce, Apex programming language, and Lightning component framework. The next skill required to become a Salesforce developer is time management. Now, a Salesforce developer has to follow the business timelines and schedules and complete the assigned work by the given deadline. They often work on multiple projects and ensures the work produced meets best practices. The next skill which is required is problem-solving abilities. Now, a Salesforce developer should be able to identify and troubleshoot issues and faults as they arise. They should be able to solve end users' doubt and queries as well. Now, these were some of the skills required to become a Salesforce developer. Let us move on to the next topic and see some of the salaries and market trend for a Salesforce developer. According to Glassdoor, the average salary for a Salesforce developer in India is 4,88,000, and a senior Salesforce developer can earn up to 10 lakhs per annum. Likewise, the average salary for a Salesforce developer in the United States is $99,300. And according to Glassdoor, there are 1,530 job openings for a Salesforce developer in India, with Bangalore having the highest of 431 job openings. In the US, there are more than 4,000 job vacancies for a Salesforce developer. Now, these are only from one website. There can be many more job openings around you. Now, talking about Salesforce, they forecast interesting and promising trends such as increased Salesforce adoption by small companies, increased emphasis on field service and the Internet of Things. They are also planning to simplify the app in order to appeal to a wider selection of users. And according to their latest financial report, the revenue for the year 2020 surpassed $17 billion, reaching the annual Salesforce growth rate of almost 29%. Earlier this year, the company's executive predicted that the revenue will grow by 23% and reach $21.1 billion by the end of 2021. So you see, Salesforce is growing and is not going anywhere anytime soon. So if you're planning to start your career in Salesforce, now would be a good time. Now moving on to a final topic for today, how to become a Salesforce developer. First of all, there is no prerequisite to become a Salesforce developer, but companies do ask for a bachelor's degree in computer science or some similar discipline. Now before you start preparing for a Salesforce developer job role, you should have good knowledge of at least one high-level programming language and some basic understanding of Salesforce. So if you have just started your journey in Salesforce or are willing to start, I would highly recommend you to start learning about a few Salesforce technology like Visualforce. Visualforce is a markup language for creating custom Salesforce pages. Now to build application on the Salesforce platform, you need to know how to develop user interface and write application logic. As a Salesforce developer, you can develop the user interface using Visualforce. It's just like using JavaScript or AngularJS framework to build user interface for your website. The same way you can use Visualforce to design and build user interface for your Salesforce application. It can be used to build email templates, to develop mobile user interfaces, to generate PDFs of data stored in Salesforce, to override a standard Salesforce page, to develop custom tabs for your applications, and many more. Now this was about Visualforce. The next technology you should learn about is the Salesforce Apex. Now Apex is a proprietary language developed by Salesforce.com. After developing the user interface using Visualforce, a Salesforce developer needs to know how to add business logic to the application. Now you can write controller code and add business logic to your application using the Apex programming language. Basically, Apex is an object-oriented programming language that allows you to execute flow and transaction control statement on the Force.com platform. Now the best part is Apex syntax is 70% similar to that of Java. So if you have already worked with Java, you can easily learn Apex. With Apex, you can add web and email services to your application, perform complex business processes. It can also be used to add complex validation rules to your application and be used to add many more custom logics. These tools allow Salesforce developer to create custom application and processes within the CRM. They also allow to customize visual layout, providing users with the most relevant experience possible. They also help in integrating third-party platforms, troubleshooting technical issues, and many more functionalities. Along with this tool, it will be very helpful if you learn JavaScript, HTML5, CSS programming languages, and a few web development tools like Eclipse and Git. What is Apex in Salesforce? Well, Apex is a strongly typed, object-oriented programming language that allows developers to execute flow and transactional control statements on the Salesforce servers. Along with this, they can also make calls to different APIs. Now, Apex syntax looks 70% the same as that of Java. Apex enables developers to add business logic to most system events, which includes button clicks, record updates, and creating Visualforce pages. Now, as I've mentioned, Apex is a strongly typed. It means Apex validates or checks the reference to the object at the compile time. It is also object-oriented programming language, which means it supports classes, inheritance, and interfaces, and so on. and all the Apex code is saved, compiled, and executed on the Salesforce server itself. So now let us move on to our next topic, which is features of Salesforce Apex to understand Apex better. So the first feature is Apex can be integrated with DML calls and APIs, which means Apex can be used to perform DML operation like insert, update, upsert, delete on Salesforce object records. Now Salesforce objects are like accounts, your contacts, your leads, opportunities. All these are known as Salesforce object, and you also call them S objects. You can perform queries on this S object records using SOQL, which stands for Salesforce Object Query Language, and SOSL, which stands for Salesforce Object Search Language in Apex. It also supports custom public API calls that can be built from stored Apex methods. The next feature of Apex is it is easy to use. Now Apex is based on the familiar Java idiom such as variables and expression syntax, blocks and conditional statement syntax, loop syntax, object and array notation, and so on. Apex syntax and semantics are easy to understand, and it encourages the efficient use of Lightning Platform. Therefore, Apex code are both briefly and clearly understood and also easy to write. Also, Salesforce Apex is very easy to test. It provides built-in support for unit test creation and execution. It includes test result to indicate how much of the code is covered and which part of your code could be more efficient. Now moving on to the third feature of Salesforce Apex, which is it is data focused. Now when I say Apex is data focused, it means most of the operations are based on the data in the database and is designed to execute multiple queries and DML statements together on the database. And database is basically where all the data is stored. So developers can use the database stored procedures to combine multiple transaction statements on a database server. The next feature of Salesforce Apex is it is multi-tenant aware. So for people who are new to Salesforce, you should know that Salesforce runs in a multi-tenant environment, which means it has a common database which multiple users use. They store all the data and records in the shared database itself. So the Apex runtime engine is designed to guard closely against runaway code, which prevents from monopolizing shared resources, which means it does not allow any single user to use more of the database than the other user. So any code that violates this limit falls, there will be an easy to understand error message displayed. So in this way, all the users will get equal access to the database. So these were some of the features of Salesforce Apex. Now let us move on to the next topic and understand when to code using Apex. Firstly, we can use Apex to create web services that integrate Salesforce with other applications. You can integrate Salesforce with various third-party applications using APIs. Second, you can use Apex to create email services for email setup. Just to give an example for this, you can create an Apex trigger that will send a mail to your email ID whenever a new lead or a new contact is added to the Salesforce database. So Apex can be used to create email services. The third point is you can use Apex to implement functionalities that can't be implemented using existing workflow flows and process builder functionalities. Now workflow rules and process builder operations sometimes have feature limitation that can be overcome with Apex. For example, pulling information from an external system can be done through Apex and not by workflow logic and process builders. Also, when dealing with certain or large set of data, Apex can be more efficient than the other options. The fourth scenario when we can use Apex is it can be used to perform complex validation over multiple objects. You can create custom transaction logic, that is the logic that occurs over the entire transaction and not just a single record or object. For example, using the database methods for updating the records and so on. So these are some of the scenarios you can use Apex to get your work done. Now let us move on to our next topic and see the Apex development environment. So in this topic, let us first understand the working structure of Apex. As shown in the diagram below, Apex runs entirely on the force.com platform. So in this diagram, you can see there are two users. One is the developer user and the other one is the end user, who perform two different sequences of action. First is when the developer saves the code, and the second is when an end user performs some action which invokes the Apex code as shown here. So let us talk about this action one by one. So first is the developer user. So when a developer writes and saves Apex code to the platform application server first compiles the code into a set of instructions that can be understood by the Apex runtime interpreter, and then saves all those instructions as metadata in the data storage. Now all the uncompiled Apex classes and triggers are compiled and stored in the data storage. So this was the developer user actions. Next, coming to the end user action. So when an end user requests or triggers the execution of Apex by either clicking on a button or accessing a Visualforce page, the platform application server retrieves the compile instruction from the metadata, which is your data storage, and sends them through the runtime interpreter or Apex runtime to the end user. All this happens with the help of the internet and in a fraction of a second, so the end user observes no difference in the execution time. So this was the working structure of Salesforce Apex. Now you can develop the Apex code in either Sandbox or Developer Edition of Salesforce. You can write Apex code using various tools. So let us talk about some of the tools we can write Apex code on. So the first one is Force.com Developer Console. Now the Developer Console is an integrated developer environment and collection of tools that we can use to create, debug, and test application in our Salesforce org. Next, we have the Force.com IDE. Now this is a plugin for Eclipse IDE which provides a unified interface for building and deploying Force.com application. It is especially designed for developers and the development team. And next we have the code editor in the Salesforce user interface. The code editor in the Salesforce user interface is where all classes and triggers are compiled when they're saved. And any syntax errors are flagged here. Also, you cannot save your code until it is compiled without any errors. The Salesforce user interface also numbers the lines in the code and uses color coding to distinguish between different elements such as comments, keywords, strings, and so on. So now I will show you how you can go to the developer console in Salesforce. So to go to the developer console, type developer.salesforce.com. So here you can see you have two options. One is login and the other one is sign in. Now as most of you would be a new user, you can just click on sign in over here. Just fill in these few details. First name and your last name, your work email ID, your job role, your company's name, the country you're in, your postal code, and you can choose a username for your account. After this, just click on this condition and click on sign me up. After this, you'll be sent a mail to an email ID where you have the link for the developer account and also a username. So after you click on the link, it will ask you to set a password for your account. After you set the password, you'll be redirected back to this page. Now, as I already have an account, I'll just log in. I'll select my account. Now click on allow over here. Now see, I'm redirected back to the same page. So all I have to do is go to my name over here, click on the drop down button and go to my developer account. Select my account. Now for people who are new to Salesforce, this is what the Salesforce console would look like. So to go to your developer console, what you need to do is click on the setting button over here and you have an option here called the developer console. So we'll just click on this. So here is the developer code. We can write our Apex code over here. So first you need to either create a class or a trigger and then start with the code. You can code right here using the source code editor. So when you save a trigger or a class, the code is automatically compiled. Also when there is any compilation errors, it will be reported to you. The source code editor uses a color scheme for easier readability of code element and provides auto completion for classes and methods name. I will show you how to execute an Apex code in the demo part. So in this topic, I've taught you how to create your Salesforce Developer Edition account and then how to come to the developer console. So let us move on to the next topic and see what are classes in Apex and how to create them. Firstly, an Apex class is a blueprint or a template from which objects are created. Now an object is an instance of a class. A class can contain variables and methods. Now variables are used to specify the state of an object, such as an object's name or type. Since these variables are associated with a class and are members of it, they're commonly referred to as member variables. So now let us see what is the syntax for the Apex class. In Apex, you can define an outer class also called as top level class, and you can define classes within the outer class called as inner classes. Next, it is mandatory to use access modifier like global or public in the declaration of the outer class. Then an Apex class is defined using the class keyword followed by the class name. You can name your class anything you want. Next, it is not necessary to use access modifier in the declaration of the inner classes. So this was the syntax for the Apex class. So now let us see how can you create a class in Salesforce. So there are three ways of creating an Apex class in Salesforce. The first one is through developer console, the second one is through Force.com IDE, and the third one is through Apex class detail page. So let us talk about it one by one. The first is creating the class from the developer console. So for this, we need to sign in to a Salesforce console, then go to setup, developer console, new Apex class, and then name our class. Let me just switch to the Salesforce console to show you how you can do it. So I'm back to my Salesforce console. So after logging in, after going to a developer account, after setup, going to a developer console, you'll be landed to this page. Now here you can just go to File, New, and you have an option here called as Apex class. So when we click on the Apex class, it will ask us to name our Apex class. You can name it anything you want and click on OK. And after that, your Apex class will be created. So let me just create it to show you how. So let me just name it as class 1 and click on OK. You see, we have the outer class access modifier followed by the class keyword and then a class name. You can now write a code over here. So this is one way to create a classes in Apex. Now let us see what are the other ways of creating a class in Apex. The second way of creating classes in Salesforce Apex is through Force.com IDE. So for this, the first step is to open your Force.com Eclipse IDE. Then you can create a new project by clicking on File, go to New, and then select Apex class. Then you can provide the name for the class and click on OK. The diagram here shows us how you can create an Apex class from the Force.com IDE. Now moving on to the third way of creating a Salesforce Apex class. It is from the Apex class detail page. For this, you need to go to Setup, then search for Apex class and click on the link. It will then open the Apex class detail page. So let me just show you how you can do that. So when you log into a Salesforce developer console, this tab will also be opened. You can just see over here. Here is my developer console and the tab from which I got to my developer console. So here you can just go to Setup, click on Setup. Just search for classes. Here you have an option called as Apex classes. So just click on this. Here you can just click on New and you can start coding. So this was the third way of creating a class in Salesforce Apex. So now I guess you have some idea about how to create a class in Apex. So let us move on to our next topic and see what are the data types and variables in Apex. Now as we know, Apex language is a strongly typed language. So every variable in Apex will be declared with a specific data type. Now variables are in-memory containers that can hold data belonging to a specific data type during processing and can be reused based on their scope. All Apex variables by default are initialized to null initially. Now Apex supports the following data types. The first one is the primitive data type, which includes integer, long, decimal, date, datetime, string, ID or boolean. Next we have sObject, which represents any record in a Salesforce database. And after that we have enums. Now enum is an abstract data type that stores one value of a finite set of specified identifiers. So let us talk about them one by one. So first we'll start with primitive data types. So first in primitive data type is the integer data type. Now this integer data type is a 32-bit numbers that does not include any decimal point. The value ranges from the start from minus 2,147,483,468 and the maximum value is up to 2,147,483,647. So now let me just switch to my Salesforce console and show you how you can declare an integer data type and variable. So just to show you how you can declare an integer data type and variable, we'll first go to debug and open execute anomalous window. Now execute anomalous window is a place where you can write the logic of a program and run it without having to save it. So we'll just go to open. So here you can just write integer, which is the data type, and we're going to use a variable, let's say I, and we'll initialize I to 100. Now this 100 will be stored in the I variable. Now let us print the I value. For that I'm using system.debug I. Now system.debug is like an output statement. Like we have system.out.println in Java or cout in C++. Like that in Apex we use system.debug. So after this we'll just click on execute. Now if you don't see this window, what you have to do is just click on open logs. Make sure this is always checked and then click on execute. Now you can see there are different timestamps, events, details. In order to get our output, you need to search for debug. See, you'll have an option here called user debugs, and that is where our output will be seen. Also, you can just click on debug only option over here and you can see 100. So this was about the integer data type in Apex. Now let us move on to the next data type. Our next data type is long. Now this is a 64-bit number without a decimal point. This is used when we need a range of values wider than those provided by integer. The syntax will almost be the same. All you have to do is replace integer I is equal to 100 by long L and the value. Next we have decimal data type. Now a number that includes a decimal point are declared with a decimal data type. By default, all the currency fields are automatically assigned to the type decimal. Also, if you want to add more numbers after the decimal point, you can use double data type. Next, we have the date data type. Now, this variable data type indicates a date, but it can only store the date and not the time. Now, if you want both the date and the time, we can use the datetime data type, which is a value that indicates a particular day and time. Here is the example for date data type. Date today is equal to date.today function, and it will display the date in this format. First will be the year, then will be the month, and then will be the date. After this, we have a unique data type which is known as blob. Now, blob is basically a collection of binary data stored as a single object. And here is an example of a blob. After this, our next data type is the string data type. Now, string is any set of characters or alphabet within a single quote, and it does not have any limit for the number of characters. You can define a string data type with a keyword string followed by the variable, and you can write any number of characters over here. In the example, I've written ABCDE. Followed by the string data type, we have the ID data type. Now, ID is used to store the ID of a record. Now, as we know, all records will have a unique ID. So, in order to perform any operation on that record, we need to use the ID of that. So, ID in Apex is any valid 18-character Lightning Platform record identifier. If you set an ID to a 15-character value, Apex automatically converts the value to its 18-character representation. Here you can see the example of an ID, which is 003 followed by a number of zeros, 3T2PGAAD. It is basically an 18-character Lightning Platform record identifier. After this, we have the Boolean data type. The Boolean data type is a value that can only be assigned true, false, or null. It is basically used to check for a condition, if it is either true or false or null. So these were some of the primitive data types in Apex. Next, we have the S-object data type. The S-object is a special data type in Salesforce. Now, as you know, Apex is tightly integrated with the database. So S-object represents and record into the Salesforce database. So with this data type, you can create or modify or delete any records in the database. So for example, let me just execute a set of code so you can see how does S-object data type work. So for this, let me just switch back to my Salesforce console. Now here, I'll just go to Open Execute Anomalous window. So I'm going to create a new account using the S-object data type. So first, let me just show you what all accounts name do I have. I'll just go to accounts. So these are the accounts I have. So let me just create an account called latest account. So for that, I'll go back here. Account, which is my S-object. I'll just create an instance for the account. Let's say ABC is equal to new account, and then I'm going to name my account. Let me just name it latest account, semicolon, and I'm going to insert ABC to the database and just click on execute. Now you can see our latest account should be created. So let me just go back here and refresh this. Here you see our latest account is created. So this is how S-object data type can be used. After the S-object data type, we have the enum data type. Now enum is an abstract data type that stores one value of a finite set of specified identifier. You need to use the keyword enum to define an enum data type. Here is an example for an enum data type. Public, enum, season, and we have a list of the identifier: winter, spring, summer, and fall. After this, we also have collection, which includes list, sets, and maps. So this was about Apex data type and variable. Now I guess you have some idea about classes and data types in Apex. So let us move on to the next topic and write an Apex program. So in today's demo, we're going to write a simple hello world program. So for that, I've switched back to my Salesforce console. So my first step is to create an Apex class. So for that, I'll go to Files, New, Apex class. So I'll just name my Apex class as Apex class itself. So click on OK, and a class is created. So you can see our class starts with a public access specifier followed by the keyword class and a class name. Next, we will write a method which will contain the hello world code. So for that, we'll specify public static void. Our method name, we'll just call it Apex method. Yeah. And now inside this, we are going to output hello world statement. So what is the output statement in Apex? It is system.debug. So I'll just write system.debug. Now you see Apex is suggesting me to choose any of these following options. And you can see there is different colors in which public is written, void is written, and the method name is written. This is what I was talking about. So I'm going to type in hello world over here. Now I'll put a semicolon. Now this is the code for the hello world program. Now we'll have to save this. So just go to save. Also in Apex, we do not have to manually compile the code. As soon as we save the program is automatically compiled. So there is no error in our code. If there is an error, it would be displayed over here. See, under problems, it will be displayed. Let me just show you. So if I remove void from here and save it, you see we have a problem over here. Now you can see our error over here. Static is not allowed on constructors. Invalid constructor name Apex method. So when I remove void, I will have to return some value if I don't use void. So that is why the error is over here. So just type void again. Save this. Now in order to view our output, what we need to do? Go to debug, open execute anomalous window. Now here all you have to do is enter your class name and your method name. So class name is Apex class dot a method. Semicolon. Always make sure that the open log is ticked and click on execute. Now you see the log appears over here. Now if you uncheck the open log button over there, this log will not automatically open. So for our output, you can just scroll down to use the debug, or you can just click on debug only over here. So here is our output, hello world. Now this was just a simple example. We are going to see many more example program in this tutorial. So now let us move on to our next topic, which is keywords in Apex. First is the final keyword. You can use the final keyword to modify a variable and give it a constant value. To define a constant, mark a variable as both static and as final, which means you need to use both the keywords static and final. Also, you should remember that the final variable can only be assigned a value once, either when you declare a variable or inside a constructor. You must assign a value to it in one of these two places only. Now here is an example for the final keyword. Here you see we have used both the keywords static and final, and we use the integer data type, and int constant is the variable, and we have initialized the value to 10. Now this int constant variable value will be 10 throughout the program. If you try to override the value for this int constant variable, then you will get an exception, system final exception. Final variable has already been initialized. Then you will get an exception, system final exception, final variable has already been initialized. So this was about the final keyword in Apex. The next keyword is return keyword. A return keyword is a keyword used to return a value from a method. Now looking at an example of the return keyword, it starts with the keyword return and then is a variable whose values we want it to be returned. After the return keyword, we have with sharing keyword. Now if a class is defined with this keyword, then all the sharing rules of the class applies to the current user. Explicitly setting this keyword ensures that the Apex code runs in the current user context. Now this is the syntax for the sharing keyword. First is the access specifier, which is public in this case. Then is the with sharing keyword followed by the class keyword and the class name. After this, the next keyword is without sharing. Now without sharing keyword is opposite to the with sharing keyword. The without sharing keyword is used when declaring a class to ensure that the sharing rules for the current users are not enforced on that class. You can use this when you can explicitly turn off sharing rules enforcement when a class is called from another class which is declared using with sharing keyword. Now coming to the syntax of without sharing, it is almost the same as with sharing keyword, but instead of with sharing, we have the without sharing keyword over here. So these four were few of the keywords in Salesforce Apex. Now let us move on to the next topic and understand the conditional statements and the looping statements in Apex. Decision-making structures requires the developer to specify one or more condition to be evaluated or tested by the program, and along with this condition, there should also be statements or set of statements to be executed if the condition is determined to be true, and optionally other statements to be executed if the condition is determined to be false. So now let us take a look at the conditional statements in Apex. First, we have the if condition. So in this, it checks for only one condition. If it is true, then it executes the body of the code. Else, if it is false, it does not execute the statement in the parenthesis, but the next statement after it. Now take a look at the syntax for an if condition. It starts off with the if keyword followed by the condition. After this, if the condition is true, the set of statement inside the parenthesis is executed. Else, it just comes out of the parenthesis, and after the parenthesis, the next statement is executed. So let me just switch back to my developer console to show you the working of if statement. So for this demo, let me just go to open execute anomalous window, remove this. So I'm going to use an if condition to check which of the two numbers are greater. For that, I'll assign two variables with some numbers. I will assign integer a to 100. Next, I'll assign integer b to 200. Now after this, I'll check for the if condition. If a is greater than b, then if it is true, it will output a is greater. And if the condition is false, it will output that b is greater. So now the open log is ticked. I'll just execute this. Now I'll click on debug only, and you can see b is greater. Now let me just change the value of a and make a greater and see what will be the output. So I'll just change this to 300 and click on execute. Debug only, and you see a is greater. It shows the timestamp when the program is executed. So this was the if conditional statement in Apex. So now let us move on to our next conditional statement, which is if else statement in Apex. Now an if statement can be followed by an optional else statement, which executes when the condition is false. Now if the condition is true, then the if block of code will be executed. Otherwise, the else block of code will be executed. Now let us take a look at the syntax for the if else statement. So it starts off with the if keyword followed by the condition. And if the condition is true, the first set of statements are executed. But if the condition is false, the second set of statements are executed. Now let us see an example for the if else statement in a Salesforce console. So let me just switch to my Salesforce console. I'll go to open execute anomalous window. Now I'll just make the changes in this code itself. So I will add in another variable over here, integer c, which is equal to 400. We'll assign the value of c to 400. Now we'll check for a condition over here. If a is greater than b and also a is greater than c, then we'll output a is greater. Else, if it is not true, we will output b or c is greater. Now here we're checking for a condition if a is greater than b and if a is greater than c also. If that is true, we'll get the output saying a is greater. Else we'll get the output saying b or c is greater. So this is checked. We'll click on execute. Now I use the debug. Click on debug only. Now you see b or c is greater. So this was the if else conditional statement in Apex. So now let us see the next conditional statement, which is nested if. You can use nested if there are more than 3 conditions to test and more than 4 set of statements to execute. This is the syntax for nested if statement. So it checks for the first condition, and if the condition is true, the first set of statements are executed. Next it checks for the second condition and so on. So these were some of the condition statements in Apex. Now let us see what are looping statements in Apex. So the first looping statement in Apex is the while loop. The Apex while loop repeatedly executes a block of code as long as a particular Boolean condition remains true. And after the condition becomes false, the control comes out of the loop and the other statements are executed after that. So this is the syntax for a while condition. The syntax starts with a while keyword, then it checks for the condition, and if it is true, the set of code is executed. So let me switch to the Salesforce console to show the working of the while loop. So go to debug, open execute anomalous window. So I'm just going to display first 10 numbers. So for that, I'll just initialize the count integer variable to 1. Next, I'll just add the while loop. While count is less than 10. System.debug count. And then increment the count value to count plus plus. So here in the first statement, I've initialized the count integer variable to 1. Then I'm checking for a condition. So in the first time, it'll check if 1 is less than 10. It is. So it'll display 1 over here. So as count is initialized to 1, it'll check if 1 is less than 10. As it is true, it'll display the count value over here, which is 1. Next, it'll again check if 2 is less than 10. So let me just make it 11 over here. So now when the value of the count is 11, it'll check and the condition will be false. So it'll just come out of the loop. So I'll just execute this and I'll go to debug only. Now you can see all the 10 values are displayed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this was the working of the while loop. So now let us move on to the do while loop. The Apex do while loop repeatedly executes a block of code as long as a particular condition remains true. But unlike the for loop and the while loop, which tests the condition at the top of the loop, the do while checks the condition at the bottom of the loop. Another major difference is that the set of code is at least executed once in the do while loop. Now this is the syntax for the do while loop. First is the do keyword, then is the code to be executed, followed by the while condition. So let me just switch back to my Salesforce console to show the working of do while loop. So let the integer count be 1 itself. I'm going to type do over here, then execute the set of code. Now here we are going to print an increment inside the code and then check for the while condition. Now I'll execute this. Now I'll see the same set of values will appear. So let me just make it 12 in order to show the difference. I'll just make this 12. So I'll just make it 13. So the first 12 number will be visible. So I'll execute this and go to debug only. And you can see the first 12 digits are displayed. So this was the working of the do while loop statement. So now let us move on to the third loop, which is the for loop statement in Apex. A for loop is a repetitive control statement that allows you to effectively write a loop that needs to be executed a specific number of times. There are different ways of writing a for loop in Apex, but here is the syntax for the list or set iteration. So the syntax starts with the for keyword, followed by the variable and the list or set you want to iterate. Then it has the body of the code. What are triggers in Salesforce? Triggers in Salesforce are known as Apex triggers. Apex triggers are a piece of code which enables you to perform custom action before or after the change of any Salesforce record. These changes could be anything like insertion of records or updation of records or deletion of records. You can use triggers to perform operation based on a specific condition. So only when the condition occurs, the triggers are executed or fired. Triggers could be used to modify records or restrict any certain operation from happening, like restricting addition of a field or deletion of a field. Now you can use triggers to do anything that you used to do in Apex, including executing SOQL and DML statements or calling custom Apex methods. Triggers can be defined for top-level standard objects such as accounts or contacts, and even for custom objects and some standard child objects. So if any changes occurs to these objects, you can set a trigger to perform a set of functionalities. Now another point you need to remember is triggers are active by default when created. Salesforce automatically fires the triggers when a specific database event occurs. So I guess you have understood something about Salesforce trigger. So now let us move on to the next topic, which is the types of Salesforce trigger. So basically there are two types of triggers in Salesforce. The first one is the before trigger and the second one is the after trigger. Now as the before trigger name suggests, they're used to perform a task before a record is inserted or updated or deleted. These triggers are usually used to update or validate record values before they are saved to the database. Next, after triggers are used to access field values that are already set by the system, such as an records ID or date or phone number field, and to affect changes in other records as well. These triggers are usually used to update or validate record values after they are saved to the database. Also, after triggers are read-only. You cannot make any changes to them. So these were the two types of triggers in Salesforce. So now let us move on to the next topic and understand what are the trigger events in Salesforce. Now as we all know, triggers is a set of statement or a piece of code. So it can be executed on any of the following events. Here is the list of trigger events, which means now a trigger can be fired when the following event occurs. So before insertion means the trigger will be fired before the records inserted to the database. For example, let us say inserting a new lead. You can create a trigger which will be fired if the detail of the new lead is same as that of the previous one. This way you will avoid the duplication of record. So these are the following trigger events. The first one is before insert, next we have before update, and next we have before delete, after insert, after update, after delete, and after undelete. You can set a trigger before or after an event occurs. You can write a trigger and it will be executed before or after the DML event. DML is nothing but insertion, updation, and deletion. You can also add more than one trigger event, but they should be comma separated. Now let me explain this better with the next topic, which is syntax for Salesforce trigger. The syntax of a trigger definition is quite different from a class definition syntax. A trigger definition starts with the trigger keyword. It is then followed by the name of the trigger. You can name a trigger anything you want. Next is the Salesforce object that a trigger is associated with. This could be anything like leads or contacts or accounts or any other custom objects. Salesforce object is known as S object. Next is a trigger event, which we have talked about in the previous topic. You can fire a trigger in one or more events, but it should be comma separated. Next is the body of the code, which will contain the condition under which it fires. So this was the syntax for writing a trigger in Salesforce. Now let us execute a small demo to understand this better. We will fire a simple trigger before we insert an account and write a message to the debug log. So let me just quickly switch to my developer console. So here I've signed in into my Salesforce developer console. So the first step is to click on File, go to New. You have an option here called Apex Trigger. So we'll just click on that. Now we can name a trigger anything we want. We'll just name it Demo. And the S object we're going to select here is Account. I will click on Submit. Now it's creating a new trigger. And you can see the syntax for a trigger. The trigger keyword, the name of a trigger, on what S object and what trigger event. By default, it is before insert. Next, we're just going to display hello world here. So for that, system.debug hello world. Semicolon, we'll just save this. Next, we have to go to a debug, open execute anomalous window. Now here we're going to create a new account. Account A is equal to new account. Now I have to give a name to our account. So we'll just name it test account. Next, insert it. So let us execute this. Now here is our execution log. So just click on debug only, or you can just scroll down and find debug over here. Here is the debug. So here you can see our message hello world. This was just a small code to explain the syntax for writing triggers in Salesforce. Now I guess you have some idea about Salesforce trigger syntax. Let us move on to the next topic and understand what are context variable. So all trigger define implicit variables that allow developer to access runtime context. To explain this in simple terms, context variables are special variables which are managed and created by Salesforce itself, which usually gives us the information about the trigger. These context variables are required when we want a piece of code inside the trigger to run only for a particular event. Using this context variable, we can specify which piece of code we want to run for which particular event, avoiding running all the other pieces of code which are not required to run for a specific event. Another important point is all context variables are contained in the system.trigger class. So now let us take a look at the list of context variables in Salesforce trigger. The first context variable is insert. This returns true value if the trigger was fired due to an insert operation from any Salesforce user interface or Apex or the APIs. I would like to show you the syntax here so you can know how exactly can we use context variable in our code. So you can see if trigger.isInsert is equal to true, only then the set of code will be executed. It basically is like it's checking for a condition, and only if the condition is true, the set of code will be executed, else it won't be executed. The next context variable is update. This returns true if the trigger was fired due to an update operation. Next is the isDelete. Now this returns a true value if the trigger was fired due to an delete operation. After this, we have isBefore. This returns true if the trigger was fired before a record was saved to the database. After this, we have isExecuting. This returns true if the current context for the Apex code is a trigger and not a Visualforce page or a web service or an API call. The next context variable is after. This returns true if the trigger was fired after all the records were saved to the database. Next is isUndelete. This returns true if the trigger was fired after a record was recovered from the recycle bin. Next, we have the new context variable. Now this returns a list of new version of the Salesforce object records. The Salesforce object records is only available in insert, update, and undelete triggers, and the records can only be modified in before triggers. After that, we have new map. New map is a map of IDs to the new version of the Salesforce object records. This map is only available in before update, after insert, after update, and after undelete triggers. After this, we have old. Old returns a list of old version of the Salesforce object records. This Salesforce object list is only available in update and delete triggers. After this, we have old map. Old map is a map of IDs to the old version of the Salesforce object records. This map is only available in update and delete triggers. And finally, we have the size context variable. This returns the total number of records in a trigger invocation. This would include both old and new. So these were the context variable in Salesforce. Now let us move on to the next topic and take a look at the things to consider before implementing a Salesforce trigger. The first point is absurd trigger. The upsert triggers can fire both before and after insert or before and after update trigger as appropriate. Next we have the merge trigger, which can fire both before and after delete for the deleted records and both before and after update for the updating records. The third thing you need to consider before writing a trigger is a trigger cannot have a static keyword in its code. Next, triggers that execute after a record has been undeleted only works for specific objects and not for all the objects. The next thing you need to keep in mind is the field history is only updated after the trigger has successfully finished processing the data. Also, any callout should be asynchronous so that triggers does not have to wait for the response. And the last point is, if a trigger completes successfully, the changes are committed to the database. And if it fails, all the transaction is rolled back, which means it becomes the same as it was before. So these were some of the things you need to consider before writing a trigger in Apex. Now before we move to our next topic, I would like to say that triggers can be very helpful. It can help you avoid costly data related mistakes inside of Salesforce while streamlining and automating actions that otherwise would have had to be performed manually. Also, Apex triggers help you manage how specific types of data are handled internally, which will help you execute a broader overall data maintenance and management strategy. Apex triggers help you manage how specific types of data are handled internally, which helps you execute a broader overall data management and maintenance strategy. With Apex triggers, you can also effectively identify and fix common database issues, such as merging duplicate accounts, standardizing job titles, and formatting address and phone number fields consistently. So with this said, let us move on to the next topic, which is the demo part, where I will show you how you can create an Apex trigger. So in this demo, we are going to create a trigger so that when someone creates an account, the trigger will check if the account name already exists. If it does, it will throw an error message saying the account name already exists. So for this, let us go to our Salesforce account, developer.salesforce.com. So if you're going to the website for the first time, here you'll have two options, login and sign in. If you're a new user, you can just create an account. It'll just take maybe 1 or 2 minutes to create an account. After you've logged in, you can just go to your name over here and go to my developer account. Select your username. So if you're new to Salesforce, this is what a Salesforce console would look like. Now to go to the developer console, just click on the setting over here and select developer console. Now go to file, new, Apex trigger. We can name our trigger anything we want. We'll just name it account duplication. And on what Salesforce object we're going to do this? It's on account. And we'll click on submit. So here we have the trigger keyword, the name of a trigger, and on account object. And here we have the trigger event. Next, for a body of our code, we're going to create a for loop first. For account object, we're going to create an instance for account, trigger.new. Next, list account. Next, creating another instance, list account myNew is equal to. Now here we need to select an ID which will compare the new account name with the existing account name. So for that, let's go to select ID, comma, name from account where name is equal to account name. This statement will get us the account name. Now in order to compare and throw an error message, we need to check for a condition. So for that, if myNew.size. Here we are using the size context variable, which will return the total number of records in a trigger invocation. So if it is greater than 0, it will throw us an error message. Account.name.add error. Account with same name already existing. We're just going to save this. So it's saved. Now let us go to our account section. Now here you can see I have 5 account records and these are my account names. So now let me try creating a new account with the same name. So I'll click on new and the account name I'll give it as test account. So now none of the other fields are mandatory, so I'll just click on save. So here you can see we are getting an error message saying account with the same name already existing. and you can see how simple it is to create a trigger in Salesforce. So starting off with the first basic question, what is Salesforce? You can answer this by saying Salesforce is a cloud-based software company which provides CRM services and along with that also provides various software solutions and a platform for users and developers to develop and distribute custom softwares. Salesforce offers a variety of products for companies such as the Salesforce Sales Cloud, the Marketing Cloud, Service Cloud, Community Cloud, Analytic Cloud, App Cloud, and a couple of more services. Each of the services has its own functionalities and can be used by different teams in a company. Like the sales team can use the Sales Cloud, the support team can use the Service Cloud, and so on. So this was about Salesforce. Now let us move on to our next question. Our next question is, what exactly is CRM and how is it helpful? CRM stands for Customer Relationship Management, and it means a strategy or a technique which is used by businesses to maintain a healthy relationship with the customers and the potential customers. CRM also includes managing all the interactions with the customers. Now, talking about some of the benefits of using Salesforce CRM, it helps in enhancing the communication with the customers. Next, when you understand customers and their needs better, you can provide them with the improved customer service. Next, it aids in improving analytical data and reporting, so you can use this data for further references also. Moving on, CRM is also a great tool for automation, which relieves our businesses from repetitive and less important tasks, and they can focus on the more important tasks first. The fifth benefit is it provides greater efficiency in managing multiple teams and can also be customized to help in individual clients' account planning. So these were some of the benefits of CRM. Now I guess you have some idea about what exactly is CRM and what are some of its benefits. Now let us move on to our next question. Our next question is, what are tabs in Salesforce? A tab is nothing but a feature in Salesforce that displays custom object data that is embedded in a particular application. Some of the tabs in Salesforce are custom object tabs, web tabs, flexible page tab, lightning page tabs, and Visualforce tabs. Now moving on to our next question, what do you understand by sandbox org and define the different types of sandboxes available in Salesforce? Okay, first let us understand what is sandbox org. A sandbox is a copy of the production environment used for testing and development purpose. So this was the definition of sandbox org. Now let us understand this with an example. So let's say in a company there are various departments which requires data for different purposes, like for development, for testing, or for training. So to use these functionalities, Salesforce offers a feature that makes different copy of the production organization called a sandbox. These sandboxes are isolated from the main production, and hence whatever operation are performed on these sandbox will not affect on the production organizations. So I guess you have understood what exactly is sandbox org. So now let us see what are the different type of sandboxes available in Salesforce. We have developer sandbox, developer pro sandbox, partial data sandbox, and full sandbox. So this was about sandbox and the different types of sandbox in Salesforce. Now let us move on to the next question. The next question is, what is Salesforce Lightning App Builder? The Salesforce Lightning App Builder is a point and click tool, which means it is a drag and drop tool that makes it easier for you to create custom pages for the Salesforce mobile application and Lightning experience. With the Lightning App Builder, you can build a single page application that drills down into standard pages, or you can build dashboard styled application such as application to track top sales prospects or the key leads for the quarter. You can also customize the record pages for your object, which can be tailored to the need of the user. And you can also customize the Salesforce homepage, which contains the components and features that the user uses the most. So this was about Salesforce Lightning App Builder. Now let us move on to the next question. Our next question is, explain governance limits. Governance limits are the limit that controls the number of records you can store in the shared database. Now this is because of Salesforce multi-tenant architecture, where Salesforce uses a single database to store the data of multiple clients or customers. They set this governance limits so that no single client controls the shared resources. The different governance limits in Salesforce are size-specific apex limit, per transaction apex limit, static apex limits, email limits, force.com platform apex limits, and miscellaneous apex limits. So this was about Salesforce governance limits. Now let us move on to the next question. Our next question is, what is the difference between Salesforce.com and Force.com? So as we have talked about Salesforce before, you know what is Salesforce.com. It is nothing but a software as a service CRM application, whereas Force.com is a platform to support the developers and businesses in building customized enterprise applications. One of the major differences between Salesforce.com and Force.com is Salesforce is a software as a service product, whereas Force.com is a platform as a service product. Next, Salesforce helps the user to store data and application, and Force.com helps in building and operating applications that are connected with the Salesforce data. So these were some of the differences between Salesforce.com and Force.com. Now let us move on to the next question. Our next question is, what do you understand by Visual Force? Visual Force is a framework that allows developers to build custom user interfaces that can be hosted on the Lightning platform. It is a markup language which is similar to HTML, and developers can use it for performing tasks like developing user interfaces, defining the custom tabs, and integrating and customizing the sidebars in the Salesforce console. They can create and customize help pages and also add menus in Salesforce One. Visual Force can also be used to manage the home page in the account tab. So this was about Visual Force. Now let us move on to the next question. Our next question is, what is Lightning Component Framework? Lightning Component Framework is a user interface framework for developing web applications for mobile and desktop devices. It is a modern framework for building single-page applications with dynamic responsive user interfaces for Salesforce platform app. In this, the developers can use JavaScript, HTML-like markup languages, and CSS to create the applications. So in simple terms, it is just a framework for developing web application for mobile or tabs or desktop devices. So now let us move on to the next question. Our next question is, what is the difference between roles and profiles? Talking about roles first, it controls the level of visibility that user has in its organization's data. The primary function of role is that it allows higher level of users to get access to the records owned by the lower level users. An example of this would be a sales vice president getting access to the records owned by several sales managers while the peers do not get access to it. Next, talking about profile, a profile is a collection of settings and permission that controls the user. It controls what they have to do in the application and what access they have. Like the sales team has access only to the sales related application and data. The next difference between roles and profile is it is not mandatory that a user should have a role, but it is mandatory to define a profile for an user. So now I guess you have some idea about what are the difference between roles and profiles. So now let us move on to the next question. The next question is, what are the difference between Lightning Component and Lightning Web Components? Lightning Components, as we know before, are a user interface framework that is used to create applications for desktop and mobile technologies on Salesforce. Whereas Lightning Web Components are an updated web standard-based framework method for creating Lightning components on the Salesforce platform. Lightning Web Components are simpler to define and develop greatly because they are in line with the updated web standards. Our next question is, what is Salesforce Lightning? Salesforce Lightning is a new user interface by Salesforce. It comes with a convenient new design, more productivity tool, and more functionalities such as artificial intelligence. With Salesforce Lightning, you can build personalized responsive application without writing a single line of code. So now moving on to the next question, what is time triggers in Salesforce? Well, a time-dependent actions are executed at a specific time. Let's say, for example, 10 days before a record's close date. So when the specific time passes, the workflow rule reevaluates the record to make sure that it still meets the rule criteria. If the record does, the workflow rule executes those actions. This is known as time trigger. Now, example for time trigger in Salesforce would be you can choose a time to call a client or send email to a client or even schedule a time to discuss about a particular product to a client. You can automate all these tasks by setting a time trigger. So this was about time trigger in Salesforce. Now let us move on to the next question. The next question is, what is object relationship in Salesforce and what are the types of it? So to understand this question, let us first understand what are objects and what are the types of objects. Now objects are nothing but database tables that allows you to store data specific to an organization in Salesforce. There are two types of objects. The first one is standard objects and the other one is custom object. Standard objects are objects provided by Salesforce.com. Example of standard objects could be accounts, contacts, opportunities, or leads. Next, custom objects are objects which are created by the user. Custom object stores information that is unique and important to the organization. Now, object relationship is used to link custom object records to standard object record in a related list. Majorly, there are three types of relationship in Salesforce.com. The first one is lookup relationship, next is master detail relationship, and next we have many-to-many relationship. So now I guess you have some idea about object relationship in Salesforce. So let us move on to our next question. The next question is, how is a lookup relationship different from a master detail relationship? Lookup relationships are used when you want to create a link between two objects, but without the dependency on the parent object. As a master detail relationship, the master controls some trait of the child, which is detail, and both are tightly connected. Thus, when working on the master detail relationship in Salesforce, it is compulsory to define the parent record for the particular detail. Another major difference is that when a master or the parent in a master detail relationship is deleted, the child details also get deleted automatically. However, in a lookup relationship, when one object record is deleted, the other one does not get deleted. So these were some of the difference between lookup relationship and master detail relationship. So let us move on to our next question. Our next question is, can you give some example of Salesforce APIs and its usages? Salesforce has a variety of APIs that can let you interact with the system in different ways. Some of them would be the REST API. The REST API lets you integrate with Salesforce application using simple HTTP methods in either XML or JSON formats, making this an ideal API for developing mobile application or external clients. Next, there is Bulk API, which provides a programmatic access that lets you quickly load data into your Salesforce organization. Third, we have Streaming API that can be used to receive notification for changes to the Salesforce data that matches a SOQL query you define. Streaming API is useful when you want notification to be pushed from the servers to the client based on the criteria that you define. So this was about Salesforce APIs and its usages. So now let us move on to the next question and see, what is Salesforce Lightning Design System? Salesforce Lightning Design System is a CSS framework and component library which helps developers and designers to create a user interface based on Salesforce Lightning principles, the design language, and the best use cases. With the design system, you can build Lightning pages and components, mobile application accessing Salesforce, and standalone web application which are served by Android, iOS, Heroku, and some similar platforms. So this was about Salesforce Lightning Design System. Now let us move on to the next question. Our next question is, what is Audit Trail? Audit Trail helps in tracking the recent setup changes made by the administrators of your company. It displays the information about the changes to your Salesforce in the last 6 months. But for viewing the changes, one needs a permission of View Setup and Configuration. If you have this permission, you can check things like the date and time that the changes were made, the last user who made the changes, and what changes did they make. Moving on to the next question, define workflow in Salesforce. Workflow is nothing but a logic which helps in automation of tasks related to specific business processes in Salesforce. You can automate tasks like you can send an email alert, or you can send an outbound message, or you can automate a particular task or automate a field update. Our next question is, what is an external ID in Salesforce and which all field data types can be used as an external ID? An external ID is a custom field which can be used as a unique identifier in a record. They're basically just IDs which are mainly used for importing data and records. So when importing records, one among the many fields in the record should be marked as an external ID, which acts as a unique identifier for the record. The fields that can be marked as an external IDs are text, numbers, emails, and auto numbers. These fields should be unique with each other in the record. So moving on to the next question, what is reports in Salesforce? A report is a list of records that meets the criteria that you define. Reports are displayed in Salesforce in rows and columns and can be filtered according to a particular objects. So to understand reports better, let us take an example. So now let's say I have a training institute which offers various courses like Java, Python, machine learning, cloud computing, and many more. Now to keep track of all my courses which are being sold, my customer details, I'm using Salesforce. Now I want to know which of the courses is the highest selling course. So for this, I can use Salesforce report, which will have a set of records that contains all the information about the courses and the customers who have bought them. So with Salesforce report, I can see which of my course is the highest selling course. So I guess you have some idea about what exactly is reports in Salesforce. So now let us move on to our next question. Our next question is, what is dashboards in Salesforce? Dashboard is nothing but the graphical representation of the data generated by a report or multiple reports. It shows data from source reports as visual components. These components give a snapshot of key metrics and performance indicators of an organization. And another point you need to mention is, for each dashboard component, there is a single underlying report. So this was about dashboards in Salesforce. So now let us move on to our next question and see what are the different types of reports available in Salesforce. There are four types of reports available in Salesforce. The first one is the tabular report. The tabular reports are the basic and simplest of any Salesforce report. They just display the rows of data in a table with a grand total. Next, we have summary reports. Now, this type of reports in Salesforce are the most commonly used reports. They provide a listing of data with groupings and subtotal. With summary reports, you can group data based on different criteria and then perform calculation to find out the totals or the maximum or the minimum or averages. Next, we have matrix reports. Now, this type of records are a bit complicated, but they allow you to group records both by rows and by columns. You can use matrix reports when you want to see the data between two different dimensions that aren't related. For example, maybe the date and the product. The next type of report is the joint report. These joint reports can be used to group and show data from multiple report types in different views. The data in joint reports are organized in blocks, and each blocks can have its own columns, summary fields, formulas, filters, and sort orders. So these were the different types of reports available in Salesforce. Now let us move on to our next question. Our next question is, what is a bucket field in reports? Well, a bucket is a custom category that is defined in reporting. It allows you to group, filter, or arrange the related records together by ranges and segment without using complicated formulas and custom fields. So this was about bucket field in reports. Now moving on to our next question, what are dynamic dashboards? Now before we understand what are dynamic dashboards, let us first understand static dashboards so you know the difference. So static dashboards are the basic dashboard types that will be visible to any user who has made a report out of his data. Basically, a static dashboard shows the data only from a single user's perspective. Now coming to the concept of dynamic dashboards, now dynamic dashboards are used to display information which is tailored to a specific user. For example, the sales manager wants to view the report which is generated specifically to only one of his team members, then he can use dynamic dashboards for it. So now moving on to the next question, explain various Salesforce dashboard components. The first Salesforce dashboard component is chart. Now charts can be used when you want to show the data in the reports graphically. There are 6 types of charts to choose from. First is the horizontal bar chart or the vertical bar chart or the line chart, pie chart, donut chart, and the funnel chart. The second Salesforce dashboard component is gauze. You can use a gauze when you have a single value that you want to show within a range of custom values. For example, if you want to show the revenue for a month, whether it was high, medium, or low, you can show it with the help of gauze. Third, we have metrics. You can use a metric when you have only one key value to display. For example, if you have a report showing the total number of particular products sold or is expected to be sold in the current month, you can name the value as a particular product selling target for the month and display it on the dashboard. The fourth Salesforce dashboard component is table. You can use a table to show a set of report data in column form. For example, if you want to see the top 5 selling products for your current month, you can do that using tables. The fifth Salesforce dashboard component is Visual Force page. You can use Visual Force page when you want to create a custom component or show information which is not available in another component type. So these were some of the Salesforce dashboard components. So now moving on to our next question, what is data skew? Data skew refers to a non-uniform distribution of the underlying data. This leads to stuck stages and tasks, low utilization of CPU, and out-of-memory errors. This data skew is usually experienced while working for some big client with over 10,000 records. So there are 3 types of data skew. First one is the account data skew. This happens when too many child records are associated with the same parent object in one of the relationship. Then the imbalance would cause account data skew. The second type is ownership skew. This happens when a single user owns more than 10,000 records. Third, we have lookup skew. Lookup skew happens when there is a large number of records which are associated to a single record in the lookup object. So this was about data skew. Now let us move on to our next question. Our next question is explain skinny table and what are the considerations for skinny tables. So in Salesforce, skinny tables are used to access frequently used fields and avoid joins. The skinny tables have proved to improve performance significantly. Now, how does it improve the performance? As we can see in the diagram here, for each object table that is visible to you, Salesforce maintains other separate table at the database level for the standard and custom fields. Now, this separation is invisible to the customers and ordinarily requires a join when a query contains both kind of fields. A skinny table contains both kind of fields and also omits soft deleted records or recycled bin records, which helps speeding up the queries, thus improving the performance. Some of the consideration for skinny tables would be skinny tables can contain a maximum of 100 columns. Next, skinny tables cannot contain fields from other objects. Also, skinny tables don't include soft deleted rows such as recycled bin records. Next, you need to contact the Salesforce support to recreate tables or add new tables. So now moving on to our next question, what is Apex? Well, Apex is a proprietary language developed by Salesforce.com. It is an object-oriented programming language that allows you to execute flow and transaction control statements on the Force.com platform. One interesting fact about Apex is its syntax is 70% similar to Java. So if you've worked on Java before, you can easily learn Apex then. Some of the functionalities of Apex would be you can add web and email services to your application or perform complex business processes. It can be used to add complex validation rules to your application and can also be used to add one or more custom logics. So now moving on to our next question, what are the different types of collections in Apex? So there are three main types of collection in Apex. The first is list. Now list is an ordered collection of elements which is distinguished by their indexes. Now list elements can be of any data type. It could be primitive type, collection, user-defined types, or built-in Apex type. Next we have sets. Now sets is an unordered collection of elements that do not contain any duplicates. Set elements can be of any data type. It could be primitive, collection, user-defined type, or built-in Apex type. And third we have maps. Now a map is a collection of key value pairs where each unique key maps to a single value. Now this keys and value can also be of any data type. Now I guess you have some idea about the different type of collection in Apex. So now let us move on to the next question and see what are getters and setter methods. Well, the get method or the getter method is used to pass value from the controller to the Visualforce page, whereas the set or the setter method is used to set the value back to the controller variable. Now look at the code snippet over here. Now here you can see we have used the get method to return the name, which is to pass value to the Visualforce page. And the set method is used to make the first letter of the name uppercase and the rest lowercase. So now let us move on to our next question. Our next question is, what do you mean by an interface in Apex? So an interface is like an Apex class in which none of the methods have been implemented. It only contains the method signature, but the body of each method is empty. So to use an interface, another class must implement it by providing a body for all the methods contained in that interface. Also, all the interfaces in Apex are global and the methods in the interface are public and abstract methods. Moving on to our next question, what is SOQL and what is it used for? Well, SOQL stands for Salesforce Object Query Language. It is very similar to the widely used language SQL to query databases. But SOQL is designed only for Salesforce data and is used to query the Salesforce platform to retrieve data. SOQL can also be used with Apex and Visualforce to return sets of data. So this was about standard object query language. Now let us move on to our next question. Our next question is, what is button overriding? Well, you can override the behavior of standard buttons like the new, view, or edit in Salesforce Classic, Lightning Experience, and mobile independently. For example, you can also override the tab home page that displays when a user clicks a standard, custom, or external object tab. Now moving on to our next question, what is the difference between a standard controller and a custom controller? Talking about the standard controller first, standard controller in Apex inherits all the standard object properties and the standard button functionalities directly. It contains the same functionality and logic that are used for standard Salesforce pages. Next, talking about custom controller in an Apex class implements all the logic for a page without leveraging a standard controller. Custom controllers are associated with Visualforce pages through the controller attribute. So this was the difference between standard controller and custom controller. So now let us move on to our next question. Our next question is, what is Who ID and What ID in activities? Well, Who ID in Salesforce refers to people things. Example of Who ID would be lead ID or a contact ID. Basically, the Who ID represents a human such as a contact or a lead. Next, What ID in Salesforce refers to object type things. Example of What ID would be account ID or an opportunity ID. The What ID represents non-human objects such as accounts, opportunities, campaign, cases, or custom objects. So I guess you have some idea about what is Who ID and What ID. So now let us move on to the next question and see what is the use of an outbound message. An outbound message is nothing but an automation function that allows sending a message to external web services or an application when the record is created or updated in the Salesforce. These external web services can contain field values to introduce other processes in the external systems. Now, outbound messages can be triggered by using workflow, approval process, and entitlement process. So this was about outbound message. Now let us move on to the next question. Our next question is, how can you call a controller method from JavaScript? So to call a controller method that is an Apex function from JavaScript, you need to use action function. This question can also be asked as, what is the use of action function? So you can answer this by saying it is used to call a controller method from JavaScript. Now look at a piece of code here. Here you can see the function JS method call from any action calling the controller method from JavaScript. Moving on to the next question, what do you mean by batch Apex in Salesforce? Well, actually, batch Apex is used to run large jobs that would exceed normal processing limits. Using batch Apex, you can process record asynchronously in batches to stay with platform limits. So now to process every query separately, it will take you a lot of time. So batch Apex allows the breaking of a single job into flexible batches. So let's say you have 10,000 plus records you have to execute. So instead of executing all of them at once, you can batch the record, for example, a batch of 200 and then process this 200 records at one time. Then after that, you can move on to the next 200 and so on. So I guess you have understood what exactly is batch Apex in Salesforce. So now let us move on to the next question and see what are the methods to implement batch Apex. So in order to use the batch Apex, you need to write Apex class that implements database batchable interface and make your class global. Next, you have to implement the following three methods. The first one is the start method. This method is called once at the beginning of the batch Apex job and is used to collect the records or object to be passed to the interface method. The next method is the execute method. Execute method performs an operation which we want to perform on the records fetch from the start method. And last, we have the finish method. Now this finish method executes after all the batches are processed and is used to send confirmation email notification. You can see the syntax for all start method, execute method, and the finish method. So I guess you have some idea about what are the methods to implement batch Apex. So now let us move on to the next question and see what are the difference between SOQL and SOSL. Well, we have discussed about SOQL in question number 33. So I guess you have some idea about it by now. So let us talk about Salesforce Object Search Language or SOSL first. SOSL is a Salesforce search language that is used to perform text searches in records. Now talking about some of the differences between them, the first difference would be SOQL returns record, while SOSL returns fields. Next, SOQL uses select keyword for the retrieval of record from the databases, whereas SOSL uses find keyword for retrieval of record from databases. The third difference is in SOQL, only one object can be searched at one time, whereas in SOSL, many objects can be searched at one time. Next, in SOQL, one can query any type of field, but in SOSL, one can query only email, text, or phone number. So these were some of the major differences between SOQL and SOSL. So now moving on to the next question, is it possible to edit Apex class or triggers in the production environment? Well, the answer for this is no, it is not possible. We cannot directly edit the Apex class or trigger in the production environment. It can only be done in the developer edition, sandbox org, or the testing org. Moving on to the next question, what is Apex trigger? Now, Apex trigger performs custom action to the record in Salesforce before or after the events. Examples of such actions include insertion, updation, or deletion of records in Salesforce. to trigger help in performing operations that are subjected to specific condition, such as modifying related records or restricting certain operations. Triggers can be used for anything you do in Apex, executing SOQL or data manipulating language, or even calling custom Apex methods. So there are two different types of triggers in Salesforce. The first one is before trigger and the second one is after trigger. Before trigger is executed to validate the record values before saving to the database, whereas the after trigger is executed to validate the record values after saving the database. Now I guess you have some idea about what is Apex trigger. So let us move on to our next question. Our next question is, how can you call an Apex class in Salesforce? Well, we can call an Apex class in Salesforce from the following ways. The first one is from the Visualforce page or from the developer console. We can also call the Apex class from the JavaScript links or by using a trigger. Next, you can call an Apex class from another class or from homepage components. So these are the various ways you can call an Apex class in Salesforce. So this brings us to the next question. If required, can two users share the same profile? Well, the simple answer for this would be yes. In Salesforce, it is possible to assign a similar profile to different people or teams or managers. The advantage of this would be at the same time the entire team or the group of people can hold access to crucial data. So for example, the HR team named the HR profile can have access to candidates, employees, lead data, and all the information they need. So these were some of the important and frequently asked Salesforce interview question and answers. So with this, we have come to the end of this video. I hope it was helpful. Do comment your valuable thoughts in the comment section below. Happy learning.
I hope you have enjoyed listening to this video. Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries, and we will reply them at the earliest. Do look out for more videos in our playlist and subscribe to Edureka channel to learn more. Happy learning!